Thursday, January 18th, 2018, of the Portland City Council. Carla, please call the roll.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Saltzman.
Here.
Udaley.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. I read this at the beginning of every meeting. The purpose of council meetings is to do the city's business, including hearing from the community on issues of concern. In order for us to hear from everyone and to give due consideration to matters before the council, we must all endeavor to preserve the decorum of these meetings. To make sure the process is clear for everyone, I want to review some of the basic guidelines, which I hope will make everybody feel comfortable, welcome, respected, and safe at the meeting, and also ensure that decorum is maintained for all of us. You'll have an opportunity to participate today. State your name for the record. We do not need your address unless you want us to know your address. If you're a lobbyist, you must disclose that under council rules. If you're here representing an organization, that's helpful for us to know as well. Today, people will have 2 minutes to testify unless otherwise noted. I doubt we will go less than 2 minutes. There's a lot of people signed up, so just prepare for a long afternoon. When you have 30 seconds left, you're going to see a yellow light go on that little console there. When your time is up, the red light will go on. We ask you that when the red light goes on and it beeps, please do stop your testimony at your next sentence. Conduct that disrupts the meeting, for example, shouting or interrupting others' testimony or interrupting during council deliberations, is not allowed. People who disrupt the meeting face ejection from the meeting. If there's a disruption, I'll issue a warning that if there's any further disruption, anyone who is disrupting the meeting will be subject to ejection for the remainder of the meeting. Anyone who fails to leave the meeting when they're asked to leave is subject to arrest for trespassing. If you want to show your support for something, thumbs up is sufficient. You don't need to shout it out. If you're opposed, thumbs down. That's also good. That helps us keep the meeting moving and is respectful of everybody. So,
Mayor, can I add one comment?
Commissioner Fish.
We have received an unusually high number of emails and other communications that have written testimony from people, and perhaps some of you have come with written testimony. Please don't feel the obligation to race through your testimony in 2 minutes. If it's in writing and you've submitted it, assume that we're going to have a chance to read it. If you're bringing it for the first time today, please give it to Carla and she makes sure we get it. But this is your chance to tell us something that you want us to hear. If your written testimony goes well beyond that, just assume we're going to read it so you don't have to speed read it within your 2 minutes.
Very good. So we're here today to take public testimony on the Central City 2035 Amendments Report. Carla, could you please read all of the items 59 to 62?
Item 59, adopt the Central City 2035 Plan, Volume 2A, Part 3, Environmental and Scenic, amend the Portland zoning map and Portland zoning codes for environmental overlay zones and scenic resource zones. Number 60, adopt the Central City 2035 Plan, amend the Comprehensive Plan Map, Transportation System Plan, Willamette Greenway Plan, Willamette River Greenway Inventory, Scenic Resources Protection Plan, Zoning Map and Title 33, repeal and replace prior Central City plans and documents. Item 61, adopt the Central City 2035 Plan action charts, performance targets, and urban design diagrams. 62, adopt the Central City 2035 Plan Green Loop Concept Report.
Very good. Sally, you're obviously up here already. Could you introduce yourself for the record, please, and introduce our hearing?
Yes, Sally Edmonds, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And thank you very much, council members. So the purpose of this public hearing is for City Council to hear testimony on amendments that were inspired by public testimony on September 7th, 14th, and 20th, 2017, and that Council moved and seconded during their deliberations on October 18th, November 29th, and December 8th. So the amendments that we have today can be found in two places. First of all, we have this amendments report published several weeks ago in January, and then we also have this green packet, and these are additional amendments that are not in this amendments report, but that we would like council to consider moving and seconding today so they can be considered as a part of this hearing. So So staff will walk through each of the amendments on the green sheet in a few moments, and then we can move forward with public testimony from that point. And then a couple of things about the public testimony, and thank you, Commissioner Fish, for going through some of this. But we do have that sign-in sheet outside. We are hoping that when you come up to testify, you can reference the amendment number in either the amendment document, in this amendment's report, and I believe that there was a list that was distributed at the table outside, so people can mention the specific amendment number. Items on this amendment sheet have letters, and so please mention the amendment letter if you're testifying on something on this green sheet. Once we've finished that, we are hoping that the written record will close tomorrow, Friday, January 19th at 5 p.m., and that the next council session on this matter will be a vote on the amendments on Wednesday, March 7th. And that's not the date that is currently listed in the document. We've had a change of date today. So people can note that it's going to be Wednesday, March 7th at 2 p.m. time certain rather than Thursday.
Very good.
Yeah.
And Sally, if you can help me remember at the end of this afternoon and evening's hearing, if we can restate that again, just in case people tune in later.
Will do.
Very good. So let's start by moving through the additional amendments. That's the green packet paper. Rachel and Mindy, do you want to walk us through these?
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Rachel Hoy with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. The first is an amendment to an existing policy in the Central City Plan. This addresses some concerns that were raised by the SDIU testimony that was received in the fall. And this amendment relates to basically who benefits from development and the desire to support living wage jobs among other public and community benefits. So this amendment also, as is listed or shown here in the slide, also indicates some ways that we could accomplish this. We wanted to note that there could be land use tools, but there could be other programs to help support this in the future. So I'd like to turn this over to Commissioner Fritz if there's additional comment or discussion.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, staff, for all the great work you've done on this project. It's kept us all straight. So people may recall that at the last time we wrote this issue was discussed, Commissioner Fish and I pledged, we didn't have a specific language at that time, but Commissioner Fish and I have worked with both SEIU and the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to propose this language which you're seeing on the screen, and so I move this amendment.
And I second it.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Fritz, a second from Commissioner Fish. And thank you, Commissioner Fritz. I support this policy. I think it gives greater and depth and clarity to this issue, and I appreciate you for calling it out.
Okay, next is the Eco-Roof Amendment, Mindy Brooks, Planning and Sustainability. And we have heard some concerns that the Eco-Roof standard could make it difficult to harvest rainwater from rooftops in the Central City. The standard itself does not preclude harvesting rainwater from the portions of rooftop that are not covered in vegetation. However, staff do want to make it clear that equipment that may be needed to be on top of the roof, such other kind of equipment, mechanical equipment that is used in rainwater harvesting, that it can be located up there. So the new language in the green sheet is letter G. It's also up on the screen there. This is a minor amendment. It does not change the intent of the Eco-Roof standard, which is to maximize Eco-Roof coverage in the Central City. And I will turn that over to Commissioner Udaley. Thank you.
Yes, so we want to make sure the eco-roof requirement doesn't preclude meeting other sustainability goals for the city. Rainwater harvesting is an important tool for addressing summertime drought conditions, which is hard to imagine right now, but may happen. And I think this amendment will make it very clear that rainwater from non-vegetated portions of the roof can be captured for reuse on site. So I move to add this amendment.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Udaley, a second from Commissioner Fritz.
The next items, we have 3 minor technical amendments that we wanted to put forward today that need to be moved and seconded to be a part of the hearing for today. And we can either move them all as a group, or if there are any of the 3 that you would like to discuss, please let me know. I've listed the 3 of them here on the screen for you, and I'm happy to go through them, or if you'd like a moment to review, and then we can go from there.
Colleagues?
So just move them as a package. Yeah. I would move them.
Very good. Commissioner Saltzman moves the minor and technical amendments. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Fish seconds.
So the next slide here, these actually are 2 items that were previously moved and seconded at the December 6th session. We just omitted them inadvertently from the amendments report. So
Right.
they've already been through you and discussed. I just wanted to make it clear that they could be part of today's hearing.
Very good. So here they are, and just for the record, they've already been moved and seconded, but I appreciate your cleaning that up as well. Thank you.
And the next one is an amendment concept, so we don't have the official code maps in front of you just yet. We received testimony requesting that heights on the block between Southwest Alder and Southwest Washington and Southwest 9th and Southwest 10th have the heights maintained at the existing 460 feet. Height on this block was reduced to 410 feet to protect the view of Mount Adams from a viewpoint on Southwest Upper Hall. The view itself is actually of the whole central city skyline and area mountains. This amendment to restore heights on the block means removing protections for the view of Mount Adams and associated height limits on other blocks within the view corridor. The view of Mount St. Helens and the view of the city skyline would continue to be protected. And I'll turn this over to the mayor for additional comment.
Colleagues, I've asked staff to do some modeling and come back in March with some potential revised height limits for this view corridor and some other necessary change in order to implement a new direction on this. I've heard a good deal of concern, obviously, about the slowdown in housing production. And I understand that that means stabilizing housing in certain parts of the city, tighter lending markets, are certainly having an impact. And of course, we all know that construction costs are an all-time high. So it's very important that we continue to think about density of housing in the central city. And I was invited to actually go and look at this particular view corridor. It is a beautiful panoramic view of the greater Portland area, and it is fantastic. I'm not sure the trade-off here in protecting what is really a very small view of Mount Adams is worth the trade-off in terms of lost housing production opportunities. And so I've asked staff to come back and take a harder look at that.
So is that an amendment that's on the table, or?
So it is not an amendment. My understanding is you'll come back with a technical review, and once I have a chance to look at that, we could put that on the agenda for the, is it the March meeting?
March 7th, yes.
For the March 7th meeting, we could come back and put that on as an amendment if it's
But then,
warranted.
and then we'd take testimony on it at
We
this-
would have to have a hearing at the beginning of the meeting on March 7th, and then close testimony, and then move to the
Okay.
decision.
So this is what I'll call a late-breaking story. I just want to have the opportunity later in the spring to take a look at this, but it's an important issue, and I don't want to rush it without an appropriate factual basis. So I've asked them to go out and do some work and bring it back to us.
And when you do come back, I'd be interested in the analysis that we worked really hard on in terms of the West Quadrant plan and the potentially conflicted buildings from the advisory committee. Where does this stand on that?
Okay.
Very good. So are we now ready then to hear testimony on the amendments included in the amendments report and the amendments that we just moved and seconded here today? Again, when you come up, please begin each comment with an amendment number so we're very clear about what your comments are referring to. And please refer to the amendment numbers that are in the document or on the amendment summary sheet or the letters in the green packet. We're going to obviously limit oral testimony, as was discussed earlier, to the amendments report. We've already heard testimony about other portions of the Central City 2035 plan during 3 days of testimony in September. I would like, as always, to extend an initial courtesy to members of our boards and commissions. These are Portlanders who volunteer a significant amount of their time to help make the city a better place, and I want to thank all of you in advance, Chris and others, for your volunteer efforts to help improve our cities. I will give commission members the courtesy of 3 minutes of testimony, since they're highly engaged on these subjects. And I understand Julie Livingston is here from the Design Commission. Wendy Chung is here from the Landmarks Commission. Of course, Chris is here as well, and you're certainly welcome to testify. And as they're getting seated, we'll move into public testimony after this, 2 minutes each. We have a tradition here. If you have a disability, if you are a parent who has a small child here, or have other extenuating circumstances, please let the clerk know, and we'll make sure you get moved up to the front of the line. Sorry. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, commissioners, for inviting us to speak. I'm Wendy Chung. I'm appearing today on behalf of the Landmarks Commission. And we have a letter that you received via email yesterday, a written or printed copy that I think Carla is about to hand to you, that is slightly different, only that it contained a typographical error. And so the new letter is substantively the same as the one you received yesterday. And we're here really to talk about just 2 of the amendments, and they are amendments 18 and 4 to Volume 2A, Part 1 of the Central City Plan District. So Amendment 18 in particular speaks to the increase of heights in the new Chinatown, Japantown area, and specifically in the northern part of the district, where the heights were originally 125 feet. As you can see in the, I don't know if you have a copy of the plan in front of you or the amendments, there's a map, and it shows the adjacent parcels at much lower heights. The Landmarks Commission had previously requested that the 125 be reduced to 75 feet to be compatible not only with the other existing structures, but the other part of the historic district, so that the district as a whole could be viewed as a cohesive unit. So therefore, we would urge you to reconsider increasing heights even further in the northern part of the district because it's close to the edge and it's a fragile district. The second amendment that we would ask you to consider is Amendment 4, which allows for FAR transfers into an expanded area. And the expanded sectors include several historic districts. And what we would ask is that you consider limiting transfers into historic districts so that we don't wind up with a right-sizing problem that we've had historically when receiving applications that we're really excited to receive. For instance, in Old Town Chinatown, we're thrilled that there's been all this investment and folks are excited about investing in we have the Grove Hotel, the Society Hotel, lots of new development. The challenge that we have is that because applicants are coming with projects that are incompatible, grossly incompatible with the existing infrastructure we have, they're oftentimes frustrated, we're challenged, and of course the existing homeowners or property owners are challenged as well, because unlike other districts, the resource is actually the historic district as a whole. So one large incompatible project could cause the entire district to be delisted, and any tax benefits that those existing property owners have or any potential new development in those districts could be stymied by one overly large project. Thank you.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. My name is Julie Livingston, and I am the chair of the Portland Design Commission. You should have in front of you a letter from Design Commission that addresses amendments that you are considering today. We tried to lay it out so that it's very easy to understand, and the amendments are all identified in a bold font that is underlined. The nut of the issue is also in bold font in the text, and Design Commission's request is highlighted in orange. kind of an easy graphic display. Each of our issues, we've also identified guidelines that are relevant to the issue. I won't list them today because it's a lot of talk. So thank you very much for supporting several amendments to date that really improve our public realm. Limitations placed on parking structures that don't have gross building area above or surface parking, that's fantastic. We also appreciate revisions to parking garages on street-facing facades. This is an improvement to our public realm. And we also appreciate the expansion of the active use requirement in the Pearl District, one of our most walkable neighborhoods. We would like to draw your attention to issues that have been raised by Historic Landmarks Commission, Amendment number 4 and Amendment 18. Amendment 4 is expand transfers within a subdistrict. We would like the City Council to eliminate transfers into historic districts and in between historic districts in an effort to preserve the character of these districts. FAR, floor area ratio, does not act alone. Floor area ratio has dramatic impact on both height and massing. And these are issues that are central to our historic districts. Along with the heights in Newtown, Japantown, Amendment 18, please know that we support Historic Landmarks requests for both of these amendments. Amendment 7, River Place bonus height, and Amendment 10, River Place special tower orientation standards. The amendment proposed blankets approximately 8 blocks in River Place with districts that are currently implemented in South Waterfront. Design Commission would like to see there be more public process around this issue. And we request that the proposed expansion of South Waterfront development standards be delayed until BPS can undertake additional study. Amendment 12, the Central City Master Plan. We applaud adding River Place to the master plan site areas. We propose that there be a further amendment that the current master plan chapter includes public art as a component of a master plan. And Kristen Calhoun from the Regional Arts and Culture Council, she is the Public Art Director for Regional Arts and Culture Council, will speak to you more about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Smith, Vice Chair of the Planning and Sustainability Commission, also required by City Code to say that I'm an authorized spokesperson for the No More Freeway Expansions Coalition, and what I'll be presenting today is my own set of opinions based on both those experiences. We'll be speaking today about the Rose Quarter Freeway expansion. This would be in the context of the amendment to action item TR 120, but to the wider question of whether this freeway expansion is appropriate to be included in the Central City Plan. We've talked in the past about the fact that induced demand will likely limit any congestion benefits. We've seen Willamette Week largely debunk ODOT safety claims about this project. We haven't talked a lot about the surface improvements, and I'd like to do that a little bit today. I have heard this project described as reconnecting the community. I think that's very much a misnomer. One of the impacts of this project would be to remove the Flint Street Bridge that crosses I-5 today and replace that with a bridge from Hancock to Dixon. That really disconnects the community. This is historic Albina District, and I'm afraid the details are a little hard to see, but Flint is here and it's part of the historic street grid. And we even see that in the 50s, when the freeway was built, you can see the columns here where Flint is being bridged to continue the connection that existed historically. So when we first ripped up this neighborhood to create the freeway, we took efforts to keep Flint around, and now 50 years later, we're considering taking it out. So I don't see how we can get credit for reconnecting the community when in fact we're removing a long-standing community connection from the project. Yeah, it's interesting, there is a bold and exciting vision out there to reconnect the community through the Albina vision, something I'm very interested in seeing advance. That vision calls for freeway lids that we could put buildings on top of. That's not what this project is currently intended to deliver. The freeway lids that are in the ODOT conceptual plan are not strong enough to support buildings. We'd have to have an additional investment. So again, we think it falls short from that perspective. And finally, I want to talk about what this does for the bike ped environment. The key junction here is what's so-called box, where the freeways come together. And you can see here in the redesign for that area that you see very wide turning radii, things you might see at a freeway interchange. At the same time, we expect these to be pedestrian areas. We have bike facilities that go through here. You can see that where bikes will come from the Esplanade and the Steel Bridge to the very popular North Williams corridor, they're going to be funneled in between freeway ramps going in each direction, so people entering the freeway southbound, and over here people entering the freeway northbound. Hard to see how that's going to be a friendly environment. In the interest of time, I'll stop there, but I think we are very skeptical that this really delivers benefits on the surface.
So that's a point of clarification. Is that all the Planning and Sustainability Commission's position?
This is my position. The Planning and Sustainability Commission voted 6-4 to support the project.
Thank you.
Very good. And are there others here who represent boards or commissions who'd like to testify? Are there any? Come on up then. And we'll also be, are there elected officials or other appointed officials in the room or in any of the other rooms who'd like to come testify? Please come on down. Good afternoon.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name's Paul Anthony. I'm a member of the Portland Public School Board. I am here speaking on my own behalf to Amendment TR 120 as the board member whose geographic zone includes Harriet Tubman Middle School. Portland Public Schools plans to open Tubman, acknowledging that the decade-long imposition of K-8 schools on Portland's most vulnerable communities have not given children access to a high-quality and equitable middle grades experience, but rather the opposite. It is imperative that the district return to a middle school model as soon as possible to be able to offer classes that are even remotely equal, let alone equitable. And to open Tubman this August, we must immediately invest more than $12 million in health, safety, and infrastructure improvements. In my view, ODOT and the city are putting Portland Public Schools and its board in a nearly impossible situation. We do not know if the widening of I-5 will even happen. We do not know if children will be able to occupy Tubman safely during construction, if ODOT can confine construction to times when Tubman is not in use, or if the Tubman building and site will even be viable after construction. ODOT is proposing a 30-foot retaining wall next to Tubman. It requires horizontal pilings driven 40 feet into the hillside under the building. Those pilings will have to be woven between the vertical pilings that currently hold up Tubman. We do not know if ODOT's pilings can be driven without harming Tubman, if ODOT can limit pile driving to times when Tubman is not occupied, or what the consequences would be for Tubman if ODOT hits one or more of Tubman's pilings. ODOT is proposing multiple lids over I-5, one of which will end only 60 feet south of Tubman. Lids are known to trap and concentrate pollution. We do not know if those lids will trap and funnel the accumulated pollution north into Tubman, making an already bad air situation worse. So the district and its board is risking the education of thousands of Portland's children, the hopes and dreams of my own personal community, and spending $12 million of public money all on a resource this process is putting at grave risk. The current ask before the council is for a delay to study whether the proposed widening would actually relieve area congestion. With all the many unknowns, this seems like a very reasonable request, and I ask your support for it. Also, any answers that the council, the city, or ODOT could provide to Portland Public and its board would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Very good. And I'll make this pledge to you. I will orchestrate a meeting between yourself, the superintendent, and ODOT. I've come to get to know all of them very well of late. So you've raised legitimate questions that deserve an answer, and I'll make sure that happens.
Thank you very much. That is, as I say, deeply appreciated.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Kristen Calhoun, Director of the Public Art Program for the Regional Arts and Culture Council, and I'm here to address you about Amendment Number 12, improve the Central City Master Plan and add River Place as a master plan site. We are requesting the addition of public art as public art planning to the amendment. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today and for all the work you and many others have done on the Portland Plan. It's such an important foundational document for the growth of our city. Our city's commitment to public art is now many decades old, and our community members are free to experience public art all over the city. Since the original Central City Master Plan, we've seen many public art projects come through the Public Art FAR bonus program. You've got a couple examples in front of you, such as the RISA A&D project north of the Fremont Bridge at the Waterline Apartments. This is a project that includes 3 sculptures, 2 of which you have in front of you. And they are a tribute to the drawings that were done by Greek immigrant Tom Stefopoulos back in the 20s. Additionally, we did a temporary project that you see called the Acupuncture Project, which looked at the intersection, excuse me, the intersection of art, planning, and community issues. So these are just a couple examples of things that came through the FAR bonus program, and we understand that that bonus is being removed in favor of looking at our city's housing issues, and we favor that. We do think that there is a fix to this, which is including it in the Central City Master Plan program. And you have gotten language both from the Design Commission through Julie and their letter, as well as through us and the letter that I've just submitted to you. The Central City Master Plan process is specifically designed for very large sites, as you know. We've already had great conversations with the Broadway Corridor, the Zidell site, and OMSI about doing public art master plans for those sites. So we would request a tweak to the language in Amendment Number 12 to include public art master planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, both of you. Are there any other elected officials, appointed officials? Just want to make one clarification before Carla reads the first 3 or 6 names of people for public testimony. I want to talk about something that will not be on the list today that a number of people have raised of late, and that's the question of inclusionary housing. And I know there have been discussions about the economics of the affordable housing market. There's been the issue of construction cost increase adding to the cost of affordable housing. There have been some who have raised the question as to whether the inclusionary housing process itself has slowed housing production. We obviously would have an opportunity through the Central City 2035 plan to potentially help the overall situation by adding increased incentives for new development and doing that as quickly as we can. We already know that adding density to the Central City is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the Central City 35 planning process and goals, and the new MMA designation from ODOT. The City Council is considering an amendment to include direction to city bureaus to find a way to increase the 3-to-1 FAR cap on bonus FAR in the Central City. But today I'd like to let everybody know that I'm directing my bureaus to bring a proposal to the City Council by the end of 2018. This could include code amendments to increase FAR in the Central City. But I don't believe this is work that should be rushed. I think it should be fact and data based, and it should be done properly, so it's not going to be brought up here in the context of the 2035 plan. We have to consider the transportation impacts and avoid unintended consequences, and we have to balance that with speed. So I believe that by the end of the year, separate from this process is the appropriate time to raise that. Commissioner Fritz?
And presumably that would also include the discussion of an amendment that is on the table today to add open space zonings to the zones that could transfer FAR, which could greatly increase the amount of FAR available.
Yes.
So
I mean, we could do it either way. I mean, in my mind, we could either proceed with that today, or we could bring that back as part of the overall package at the end of the year.
No,
I'm happy either way.
It needs to go forward today. I just want to make sure that we are not talking at cross purposes.
Okay.
Mayor, and I just want to say I appreciate that we're going to take a look at this question. I've heard from a number of developers that there's a softening in the market right now caused in part by the incredible ramp up of production, the fact that the gap between the prices for the housing, the market housing is being built, and people's incomes, and some questions about forecasting the economy, because we're at some point, the question is not whether we're going to hit a speed bump someday, it's when, and it's going to happen. So I've heard lots of concrete explanations as to why the market is softening, why prices are softening a little bit, and I'm pleased to hear that we're going to do a rigorous fact-based inquiry about whether IZ has contributed to that or not, because I think it becomes an easy target, and it may very well be that other market forces are actually having a bigger impact on what's happening.
Very good. Thank you. So that's the commercial break. How many people do we have signed up for public testimony today, Carla?
70 so far.
70. Great. And if anybody else would like to sign up, you can. Are the sign-up sheets still outside? They're right behind this wall behind me. Carla will call up the first 3 people, and then she'll call up another 3 people so that if they're in one of the overflow rooms, they have time to get here.
We can call people with disabilities or small children.
Yes, please. People with disabilities, small children, or other mitigating circumstances that need to come up right now, please make yourself at home. Again, name for the record, 2 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Susan Lindsay, and I am woefully unprepared.
Please
good
have
afternoon.
A seat.
I can't sit down.
Oh,
that's why I'm
good.
standing. That's
I'm
why
sorry.
I came up
Thank
front.
you.
That's fine. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here again. I came in the fall, and I'm here again. There's so many people that are concerned about the heights and the view corridors from the west side looking east. Again, I want to focus on Southeast 12th Avenue and my concern about the maximum heights on Southeast 12th Avenue, in particular in front of Washington High School, historic Washington High School, and where the community center will be built. It's 125 feet. It was supposed to step down to the neighborhood, and it is not stepping down. And so right now, Buckman and the Inner East Side, and Buckman in particular, is doing a great job of adding lots of housing units and lots of density, and that's taking place. But we would like to focus again on this concern about that height. On, if you take a look at Stark and Southeast 12th and the difference between one side of the street and the other, it's 125 feet. So that's one thing. Second, I want to bring up just briefly a concern about this bird glazing on the window. That's one of the amendments. There seems to be a little bit of a controversy that perhaps there shouldn't be numerous types of bird glazings evaluated or used. And of course, I oppose that. I think that there's many different, and the code right now with the amendment allows for that, and I'm very much in support of that amendment so that it's not just limited. Third, I want to mention the Morrison Bridgehead and the effort to try to keep the heights down there. Thank you. And fourth, finally, is the surface lots in the Central East Side. We know that we're moving towards sort of a carless society, but we're not moving there very fast if you look at the Central East Side. And I think if you're going to make an action to get rid of the surface lots in the Central East Side, you really need to help support a structured parking in the Central East Side. That really needs to take place, and it needs to be a focus of the city. Thank you.
Well, for somebody who didn't prepare, you were succinct, on point, well-organized, and compelling arguments. Well done.
I teach public speaking.
Oh, very good. Very good. Thank you for your testimony. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Vogel, and I'm the first on the list. Carla didn't call me yet, but in any case, I'm testifying on Volume 2B, Transportation System Plan, page 155, number 9, Neighborhood Greenway Projects. Rather than just delete, I request that you substitute instead projects 20130 Southwest 12th and 20131 Southwest Jefferson, Columbia, page 170 of the TSP tables. As an urban cyclist for over 40 years, standing, I ask that these downtown bikeways in the transportation system portion of the Central City 2035 be corrected to greenways instead, with funding appropriate to meet the change. From Portland Bureau of Transportation documents, I have the definitions of both bikeways and greenways. You can read it there. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I do want to say that city bikeways emphasize the movement of bicycles, whereas city greenways are a system of distinctive pedestrian and bicycle-friendly streets and trails enhanced by lush tree canopy and landscape stormwater facilities. All three streets, Southwest 12th Avenue, Southwest Columbia, and Southwest Jefferson, are currently treeless in large swaths of their routes, especially the portions where low-income people live. My street, Southwest 12th Avenue, lost at least 5 large diameter trees within the past year in the portion where we did have trees. Tree-shaded streets make cycling far more pleasant and safer. And more pleasant and safer means more cyclists. Tree-shaded streets also make walking more possible on the hottest days of the year. I always try to choose the shadiest streets from both cycling and walking, even without triple-digit temperatures. For many of my downtown neighbors on such hot days, the lack of shade makes those streets an utter deterrent to getting to needed goods and services. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Ron Buell. TR 120 in the Transportation System Plan is what I'm speaking to. The Rose Quarter Freeway Expansion Plan is not an improvement. Those of us at No More Freeway Expansions are having a hard time discovering any real benefits for the $450 million cost. It was an interesting meeting we had with Matt Grum and Art Pierce. Matt Grum said he agreed with 98% of what we had to say, that congestion on I-5 would not be reduced, that the city's problem with Vision Zero, the growing number of fatalities here, would not be affected by this project. Grum even used the phrase induced demand. He knew what expanding freeways causes to happen. Art Pierce of PBOT wanted us to be accurate in our criticism. He said this is an ODOT project, that the money is not coming from PBOT. We, of course, disagree. This is the City of Portland Transportation System Plan. It passed the City Planning Commission. It's part of the 2035 City Plan. We heard what Mayor Wheeler said when he spoke on Think Out Loud. He said that this was about neighborhood restoration of the historic Albina district. He said that biking and pedestrian use would be improved. The mayor was wrong on both counts. There are plenty of good reasons why Irvington and Elliott neighborhood associations oppose this project. So, commissioners, you own this project. You own the $450 million cost, even though it's being paid for by the state. You own the more than $100 million that will be spent on planning, design, and engineering. You own the lack of real benefits every bit as much as the council before you own the $200 million that was wasted on the planning for the Columbia River crossing.
I'm sorry, sir, I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap it up.
My last sentence is, if I were you, I'd give some more thought to this project's role in your own legacies as commissioners and mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next three, please.
Okay, we are going with Philip J. Wolf, Doug Klotz, and Augustin Enriquez. And they'll be followed by a group of 4, Lejeune Thorson, Joan Kavetka, and Amber Ball, and Bob Shoemaker.
All right. Hi, my name is Doug Klotz. I'm here to talk about TR 120 to start with, and I'm here to say that the Rose Quarter Freeway expansion is not an improvement to the neighborhood. As a longtime pedestrian advocate and founder of Oregon Walks, I note some of the features Chris Smith has pointed out, all the large radius corners. The whole project seemed to be designed to move Rose Quarter traffic in and out, and freeway ramps were moved and radiuses were improved, increased just to get cars in and out. It's the pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. It's there, but it's sort of secondary. And some sidewalks have even been eliminated. I do support congestion pricing first. On number 8, which is the bird-safe windows, I support bird-safe windows. I am worried that the sidewalk will be less safe and inviting, and here's why. The lines or dots on the glass will make it harder for someone walking along the sidewalk to see into the building, see the people inside, and these are the people who are supposed to be providing eyes on the street and see if somebody's in trouble on the street and call police. So I'm suggesting that the rules should require a clear appearing area between like 4 feet and 7 feet so that you can see into the building, the people in there can see you. There are bird-safe treatments that are more clear. The ultraviolet treatment is more expensive, but there are treatments to do that. Or maybe just that's not the area where you need it. Anyway, moving along. I support the additional heights proposed in Volume 2A, Part 1, Section 17 at the Roseland Theater, 15 at Big Pink, 18 at New Chinatown, Japantown, and 19 in Old Town Chinatown, as well as number 7, the River Place bonus height. Downtown is the place where we should be building our highest and largest building.
You're too close.
There, sorry. Views from existing buildings are not protected and should be expected to change as the city grows. The new buildings will include affordable housing, which is much needed, and River Place site especially will provide 500 units of affordable housing. I think we need to think carefully about that and try to accommodate Portland's growth as much as we can downtown.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Philip. Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Commissioners. My name is Augustine Enriquez V, a principal with GBD Architects. City Council reviewed an amendment to the CC 2035 plan regarding an 8-acre parcel at the southern portion of downtown, commonly referred to as River Place, on December 6th last year. Prior to that, public testimony regarding the 8 acres was provided to the Planning and Sustainability Commission in 2016 on August 8th, and again to City Council a year later on September 7th, 2017. As a follow-up to the conversation you all had on December 6th, I offer a few observations. First, a question by Commissioner Fish was asked about spot zoning. In the context of River Place, spot zoning could be understood as the application of zoning to a parcel of land within a larger zoned area when the rezoning is at odds with that area's existing uses, goals, objectives, and restrictions. Spot zoning also often carries the implication of favoritism as it happens without a public process. That description does not fit the amendment. The 8 acres at River Place were discussed as part of the 2035 public process on multiple occasions, and the zoning criteria proposed in the amendment is very similar to the zoning for the immediately adjacent South Waterfront subdistrict. The amendment does not change the allowed density of the site. It does not change the allowed uses for the site. The amendment's only substantive zoning criteria being upzoned for River Place's 8 acres is building height, and that height is consistent with the South Waterfront. Secondly, the description about the potential for such a large number of affordable housing units being a public benefit is accurate. However, that is not the only public benefit. The proposal is to designate that open space in the northeast corner of the site adjacent to the existing South Waterfront Park. Similar land this close to the heart of downtown Portland, similar Similar land this close to the heart of downtown Portland, directly adjacent to open space along the Willamette River, is mostly developed with buildings or surface parking. Land such as this that could expand the public enjoyment of the Willamette River seldom becomes available for redevelopment, and when it does, is rarely part of a larger parcel that sets aside the most valuable land for publicly accessible open space rather than building upon it. Building to the height proposed in the amendment requires that public benefit.
Thank you. Did you provide us with written testimony?
I have not, but I will email this
Very good.
to you afterwards.
That'd be great. I just want to make sure I didn't lose it somewhere. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, all three of you. Next three, please, Carla.
A group of four has asked to come up.
Very good.
Lejeune Thorson, Joan Kvetka, Amber Bowl, and Bob Shoemaker. And they'll be followed by Terry Parker, Gerson Raboy, and Trish Nixon. They're 10, 11, and 12.
Very good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Hi, my name is Lejeune Thorson, and I'm here to speak about Volume 2A, Part 1, Amendment Number 7. My husband and I are members of the South Downtown Neighborhood Development Coalition, and we have some of our members here today. We've lived in Portland 42 years and downtown for the last 8. We urge the council to uphold Portland's traditional step down to the river guideline by rejecting the building height increases sought by Amendment Number 7. We welcome redevelopment in pursuit of density and affordability. But in furthering those goals, the council must never lose sight of Portland's defining characteristic, its harmonious marriage of urban charm and spectacular scenic beauty. An appreciation of harmony begins with the city's most central scenic feature, the river that runs through it. Viewed from above, from the tram, the hillside staircases, the roads and sidewalks winding above downtown, the Willamette seems always beckoning close by, inviting interaction with the great outdoors. And what better vantage point for admiring the city itself, enfolded in its hills, than from the water level, Tomahawk Waterfront Park, the bridges, the esplanade, kayaks, paddleboards, and dragon boats. We have step-down zoning to thank for preserving those Portland impressions, available to everyone from countless public viewpoints, now and forever. The Central City 2035 plan already allows River Place building heights up to 200 feet, which more than doubles the current limits. This should provide ample opportunity for any developer willing to take Portland values to heart while accomplishing the city's goals of density and affordability. We hope never to see a future in which our river is walled off from the city or vice versa, primarily for the benefit of private view holders and private profit. Let's please resist the destructive consequences of bad precedent and reject Amendment Number 7.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I am Joan Kvitka, a longtime citizen and educator of Portland. I am speaking on behalf of many active residents in my South Downtown neighborhood. We are concerned about the decision-making process regarding the proposed amendment, Volume 2A, Part 1, Number 7, River Place Bonus Heights. If enacted, it would override the existing recommendations derived from the 6-year planning process by the Planning and Sustainability Commission that includes maximum heights in River Place to 200 feet. 1, outside the customary process, the developer NBP Capital chose to wait until after the commission forwarded their recommended draft to City Council in May 2017. In July, NBP Capital then circulated to the council a glossy 22-page vision booklet describing 8 high-rise towers with heights far exceeding the 200-foot limit, even in excess of 325 feet. Number 2, NBP Capital approached Mayor Wheeler for sponsorship. The mayor's commitment to finding affordable housing in the downtown core may have led him to support the 8 soaring towers to provide more units of inclusionary housing. He may also be influenced by an attitude that is revealed in a recent Portland Tribune article in which the mayor states, quote, "Downtown is the most logical place to grow. All of the growth we can accommodate there is growth that doesn't have to go into neighborhoods," end quote. Please take note Downtown is a neighborhood for thousands of people who share the same concerns regarding proportionate livability through design and density. Number 3, MVP Capital chose GBD Architects to head the design of their River Place development. Conveniently, Catherine Schultz, a GBD principal, is also the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The appearance of conflicts is disturbing. We feel overshadowed by investors and developers who seek to define what will become iconic in Portland's near and historic future. We oppose diminishing the nature of our waterfront forever. We urge City Council to reject this amendment. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Amber Bowl, full-time resident of South Downtown with my husband and twin toddlers. I'm here to express my opposition to Amendment Volume 2A, Part 1, Number 7, River Place Bonus Height. My concerns lie in the dramatic increase in population density without a plan for infrastructure support and a recognition of the impact and unintended consequences within my neighborhood. My number 1 concern is excessive density. The amendment will enable the developer to construct a complex 5 times the size of the next largest residential complex in the area. Adding to the existing residents, this area will contain over 7,000. This is equivalent to the size of Hood River. Number 2 concern, infrastructure overload. This development will overstress the marginal transit system of an overcrowded and slow streetcar and 1 bus line. The congested street traffic will further impede both. And access to Max requires a half-mile walk to a station. The streets of Moody Avenue and River Parkway are near capacity. I worry about the added traffic on Harbor Drive. On outings, the kids and I and my double stroller cross Harbor Drive, which is already very frightful. The impact on major arteries in and out of the city may be paralyzing. And personally, over the last 5 years, my commute on I-5 has doubled, taking away precious time from my family. My 3rd concern is safety. Currently, there are 3 fire stations serving the west side downtown. Does this growth and density jeopardize the safety of the area and surrounding community? Would emergency services be able to reach my children in time when needed most? I am not opposed to responsible and safe growth, but this amendment feels careless and lacks an understanding of and solution to its crucial consequences. Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope you will consider my family's safety and concerns.
Very good. And if I could just state for the record so there's no confusion, should any developer seek to build within whatever guidelines we choose for that particular area, they still have to go through the entire planning and development process. So all of those issues, transportation, safety, egress, all of that still comes into play. Okay. And I do want to directly address the question of bias. You're right, I was not particularly eloquent in the way that I stated that. Oftentimes I'm asked, a microphone gets shoved in my face and somebody says, what's your view of the world? And then I regret the exact choice of words. But I want to tell you what I've been saying for the last several years, which is I do support density, particularly in housing. We need more so-called missing middle housing. We need more workforce housing. We need more affordable housing, lower income housing. There will be increased density because we already made that decision when we chose to locate within an urban growth boundary to preserve forest land and farmland on the periphery. So we already agreed to increase density. Now the question is, where does the density go? There are some areas where density is more appropriate than others, and I've been very clear about what my own personal hierarchy is. The central city is the best place for increased density and increased housing. Transit-oriented corridors, town centers are a close second. There will also be density in the more currently single-family residential neighborhoods, and we've pursued strategies there as well. We'll be taking up the infill, the residential infill strategy. We've supported the auxiliary dwelling unit strategy. There are strategies within this plan that actually address increased density in neighborhoods outside of the central city area. So all of that is on the table, and I did not in any way mean to imply that I do not understand that downtown is a very important and robust community and neighborhood. I simply believe, and maybe have a difference of opinion with you insofar as I believe the central city is exactly where the most density should be. That's my official view of the world, but I appreciate your raising it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next three, please.
Was Bob Shoemaker coming? So Bob Shoemaker, Terry Parker, and Gerson Raboy. And they'll be followed by 12, Trish Nixon, Brian Wilson, and Eric Gress, 12, 13, and 14.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Thank you for being here.
Pleased to be here. I'm not pleased about why we're here. I'm a member of a small coalition that has arisen in the South Waterfront, or our portion of the waterfront of the river, who disagree with the proposal that the height limit be expanded originally to 400 feet, now to something somewhat less than that, but a lot more than is presently there. Mrs. Shoemaker and I are residents of the River Place condominiums, which are immediately across Montgomery from the site that is proposed to have the new height limits. River Place condominiums there are 8 buildings surrounding beautiful courtyards, all low-rise, 3 or 4 stories, 190 condominium units. So it's a very pleasant neighborhood right on the Willamette River in a very Portland-like sort of a place. If the high-rises are allowed in what are now rental units of similar architecture, it's just a matter of probably a fairly short period of time before this will occur. And River Place, as we know it, and the 190 people that live there, will be displaced by more high-rises. This really is, in a way, the camel's nose under the tent. Once you start high-rises and discard the plan for stepping down to the river, I think the city is committed to doing that again and again and again. And I think to do this is to place great risk on River Place, and there are probably other places along the Willamette River, which are so much a part of Portland, that will be replaced by high-rises. So I'm, among others, asking you to not do this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Gerson Raboy. I'm a homeowner in the Hosford, Abernathy neighborhood. I've lived in Portland since 1965. I want to speak in favor of the least restriction of building heights, and that is a whole collection of items in this list, number 7, number 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 23. Some of those have to do with view corridors. We need more. We have a crisis in housing costs in Portland. It's related to a crisis in homelessness and a loss of demographic diversity, and we simply need more density. I want to advocate for the least restriction of building heights because we need to accommodate for the growth of the city, and we need more housing to meet the demand in order to contain costs. And I feel that the trade-off, especially with view corridors, is just is not worth it, simply put.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Good afternoon.
Terry Parker, Northeast Portland. A livable, connected city is a city where mobility is not constricted. An equitably healthy city is a city where infrastructure users pay their fair share for what they specifically utilize. Portland fails on all fronts. I'm here on TR 120. I'm in favor of this freeway expansion. It's really not an expansion, it's just adding weave lanes. You hear from a lot of bicyclists, motorists are left out of the process. Bicyclists don't use the freeway, motorists do. If anything, it'll cut down on the fender benders, be safer freeway, and you won't have the congestion from the fender benders. But I feel it shouldn't have tolls. This is without tolls. That's discrimination. And given that motorists subsidize other modes, they already pay more than their fair share. And this all coincides with the third highest response from a how to improve the quality of life question on a recent Metro poll: congestion. In Oregon, a bicycle is considered a vehicle. Providing dedicated pavement space to accommodate bicycle travel like the Green Loop is a privilege. To establish equity health, amendments to increase bicycle connectivity, including the Green Loop, need to have a reference to charging adult bicyclists some kind of privilege or registration fee for the creation, use, and maintenance of the dedicated pavement space. Continuing to siphon off gas tax dollars is inequitable. You're giving bicycles a free pass, and that would be volume 2B, 2, 4, 6, 8, anything that includes adding bicycle infrastructure. Finally, on volume 2A, number 16, 10, and 7, I agree with Commissioner Fritz that step-down maximum building properties closer to the Willamette River need to be maintained, and this includes the Willamette Bridgehead. The amendment also appears to uphold the policy that calls for improving access to and from the central city on the regional freeway system. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Terry. You meant the West Morrison Bridgehead, is that correct?
Did I say, I'm sorry, yes. Did I say east or something else? I apologize. I put west in the testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your testimony. Next three, please.
Are Trish Nixon, Brian Wilson, and Eric Kress. And they'll be followed by 15, 16, and 17, Stephen Salomon, Daniel Salomon, and Sherry Salomon.
Good afternoon. Would you like to go ahead and start for us?
Sure.
Thank
you. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and City Council. My name is Trish Nixon, and I'm a managing principal with LRS Architects. I'm responsible for our multifamily housing studio. We have been involved in the design of more than 1,000 multifamily housing units in the last 5 years and are currently working on several projects within the Central City. My testimony is related to the Central City Plan District Amendment Number 4. I request that the current requirement to transfer FAR in order to build up to the allowable height be eliminated so that maximum density can be more readily reached without the added and unnecessary financial burden that transfer has on projects. The taller height limits in the Central City allow for a lot of density and greater opportunities to provide more affordable housing units. The additional 3-to-1 FAR bonus for the inclusion of affordable housing units in a project is a great way to prioritize affordable units. But in order to utilize that development in full, the building would need to be high-rise construction. The reality is high-rise construction adds a significant cost to a project and in and of itself often requires the maximum density in order for the project to financially make sense. Every cost added to a project impacts the viability of that project, allowing property owners to build up to the maximum height without the extra cost burden of an FAR transfer after they have met the affordable housing requirement will improve the chances that a larger project will be built, therefore increasing the opportunities for more affordable living units within the Central City and larger public benefits that come with the increased housing, from SDC and CET fees to property taxes. For those reasons, I urge you to adopt the Oregon Locust requested amendment to remove the transfer requirement for building up to the allowed height. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Mayor. My name is Brian Wilson, resident of Southwest Portland, also a business owner, Mainland Northwest. We specialize in developing workforce and affordable housing as well as college housing in the Central City. I'm here to speak specifically on Amendment 4, which, by the way, I do support. I think it is an improvement. But I would like to request that you consider the Locust proposed amendment to remove the restriction on transfer and FAR and the expense. Simply put, I think it's urgently needed in the Central City in order for us to be allowed to build to the maximum height. There are several sites that I'm working on currently, in fact one that I hope to be bringing to all of you very soon that would support affordable artist live workspace in the downtown core, but the site that we're considering would require the ability to do the FAR transfer and any additional expense added to the project, which by the way will probably be financed with public facility bonds, might make it not pencil. So I would urge you to consider that amendment. I'm really pleased that you are going to bring additional FAR up as a conversation later in the year. That's fantastic, but this specifically refers to existing FAR that we already have. Thank you for your time. I yield.
Thank you. Commissioner Fritz.
Well, I just want to put out there that what we've been talking about is expanding the government's ability, City of Portland's ability to provide additional FAR through the transfer program. And that could have multiple benefits, including potentially choosing affordable housing projects to sell to at discount rates. So that's what we're looking at. And so it's just allowing to build to the total height wouldn't necessarily get us all the benefits that you just mentioned. And so that's part of what the Mayor and I will be working on over the rest of this year, is seeing what we can do in terms of a package proposal.
I appreciate those comments. I just would like to emphasize that any flexibility that we can have in the system, I think, will help us build to the density goals that the city has established, and that's certainly my priority.
Thank you.
And Mr. Wilson, you're somebody who has been actively engaged in this kind of development, and we would very much like the opportunity to reach out to you and get your expert insights and opinions on this process as well as it unfolds.
I am at your disposal.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Eric Kress. I am a partner and founder of Urban Development Partners. We're a sustainably focused, community-oriented developer based here in Portland. I am also speaking today in support of the Locust Amendment to, which addresses Amendment number 4. In essence, this amendment would allow for the building of additional market rate and affordable housing when projects meet the 3-to-1 FAR bonus requirements while staying within property height limits. Again, the 3-to-1 bonus requirements are affordable housing requirements and seismic life safety requirements. Importantly, employing this allowance for central city buildings that are already subject to design review would provide additional needed housing without compromising urban form. And considering the dire need for additional private funds to build our housing infrastructure, any policy that is accretive to our housing supply without compromising design quality is needed and consistent with the city's goals. This amendment would directly affect one project currently in our pipeline and certainly future projects, adding to the city's supply of affordable housing without additional tax burden, and in fact would provide additional property tax revenue. In addition, I'd like to request reconsideration of the Salmon Springs View Corridor, referenced as CCSW17 in the Central City Plan. As a building owner and resident of Portland, I certainly value the views of our beautiful scenic resources and quietly lament when they are blocked by construction around my home and my own office. However, I value transit-oriented affordable housing and jobs more than views, especially for views that are only available about 90 days out of the year. Taking a position for the luxury of scenic views over housing or jobs is inconsistent with our city's goals, especially in a time when affordable housing is so scarce. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Thanks. Next three, please, Carla.
Are Stephen, Daniel, and Sherry Solomon, and they'll be followed by 18, 19, and 20. Eric, Simon, Elizabeth, I'm sorry, I can't read the last name, on Southwest 19th, and Tran Prince.
The three of us would like to share the 6 minutes, not necessarily, so if you could just sort of have the bell go off at the end, would that be okay?
That's fine.
Thank you.
I figure if you went through all the trouble of wearing the same shirt, that's the
Yes.
least I could do.
We did,
The least
because
I could do.
we live in Goose Hollow, and we're wearing our Goose Hollow shirts to show support for our neighborhood.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. My family is here to...
Sorry, you have to state your name for the record.
our name, Sherry Salomon.
Stephen Salomon.
Daniel Salomon.
Thank you.
My family is here today to beg City Council to keep cherished public views protected. Don't privatize views of Mount Hood and the Vista Bridge so that only those rich enough to live in the buildings blocking the view can see them. Those are not Portland values. There are fewer and fewer places where the public can enjoy the views of Mount Hood. The Central City 2035 plan removes over 60 public views that we enjoy today. 10 Mount Hood views will be lost along the river. We know that development is necessary, so we're only asking to save one of those views. Please vote for Mayor Wheeler's amendment to save the incredibly important Mount Hood view from Salmon Springs Fountain.
Yes. Mayor Wheeler, you seem to put a lot of stock in the idea that the Planning Commission already carefully considered this view and voted not to protect it. But they didn't carefully consider this view. We were there. Are you aware that the Planning Commission chair said she was unaware that there's a view of Mount Hood at Salmon Springs Fountain? She was very dismissive and acted as if this was a view no one knows about. I'd like to remind you that the view of Mount Hood from Salmon Springs is the main image used for Travel Portland's marketing materials to sell Portland around the world. The Planning Commission chair lives in Lake Oswego and doesn't know this basic fact about Portland. This makes you wonder why we have non-Portland residents serving on such important committees. This woman heads the commission that votes on heights and views and doesn't even know about one of the most important views in Portland. This is a highly developed view site with telescopes and an amphitheater to enjoy the view. An East Side property owner told the commission that residents could always go to Council Crest to see Mount Hood, a place less accessible by public transportation. This was an idea that the Planning Commission thought was reasonable. The prevailing attitude was, just go to Council Crest if you'd like to see Mount Hood, a place which I like to reiterate is a place less accessible by public transportation. I'm not rich. I am on disability and live in Section 8 housing. I'm also a canary in the coal mine that there is so much more at stake with these issues than just access to beauty. These view corridors, eliminating view corridors, also impact human health, dignity, and community. Will you plan for a city where there is egalitarian access to views, or will you plan for a city where views are only for the rich?
Salmon Springs Fountain is visited by thousands of tourists each week, and will add more than $5 billion annually to our economy and thousands of jobs. You only need to lower heights on a few properties to save this last view of Mount Hood from the Willamette River. The view of Mount Hood from the Vista Bridge will only be one of the snow cap. We're asking to save today's view, which shows a beautiful contrast between the low slopes and the snow cap. We're also asking to save the view of the weather beacon, which can be clearly seen from the bridge. We'll only take lowering the heights slightly on 8 properties to keep the beacon unblocked. Please add an amendment to save this view.
Please vote for the amendment by Commissioners Frist and Udaley to save views of the Vista Bridge. You set heights at today's heights, but that won't keep buildings from blocking the bridge. You can fix that by lowering heights a few feet more and making the zone with lowered heights wider. Today, the bridge can be seen from many parts of the city because building heights are low for 4 full blocks next to the bridge. You'll also need to add back the protected view from I-405 down Southwest Jefferson, since that was taken away in the last draft. For those of us who aren't rich enough to live in a building blocking views of the bridge, we shouldn't have to stand in the middle of the street underneath the bridge to see the arch. There's lots of money at stake. Conflicted SAC members will gain approximately $50 to $100 million in increased profits because of the increased heights they voted to give themselves. Please vote for Commissioner Fritz's amendment to lower bridgehead heights, which will go a small way toward addressing heights that were gained unethically. But it will also prevent enormous shadows across the waterfront park and keep the riverfront from being walled off and privatized. We speak for retirees, for disabled people, and for low-income people. We hope you listen to us and not just the wealthy developers who donate to your campaigns. We should have a voice here. We should all have access to views rather than having them blocked off for private viewing by the very rich. Please vote for the average resident and not for those who stand to gain the most financially. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks all 3 of you.
Welcome.
Next 3, please.
are Eric Snow, Elizabeth Cooksey, and Tran Prince. And they'll be followed by 20, 21, and 21, 22, 23, Elizabeth Hart Morris, Donner Johnson, and Bob Solinger.
Good afternoon. Would you like to go ahead and start, please?
Eric Simon.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Cooksey.
Thank you.
Tracy Prince.
Thank you.
Hi, we're with the Goose Hollow Foothills League, the neighborhood association. Goose Hollow is one of the densest neighborhoods in all of Oregon. We're very proud of the fact that half of our board is low income and half are renters, and that reflects our neighborhood demographics. We're representing a unanimous Goose Hollow position. We've seen that the more Goose Hollow fights for what's best for all residents in ways that cost developers millions, the more vicious the personal attacks. I was defamed online again this week. I have a view of Mount Hood, and no proposed height in Central City 2035 will affect my view. I and my fellow board members aren't fighting for personal gain. We're fighting for every Portlander who hasn't had time for 3 years of reading thousands of pages of code every 6 months in order to understand how much views are being privatized and how much ethically conflicted developers are being enriched. Mayor Wheeler, your amendment would keep Mount Hood views from being privatized at Salmon Springs. However, you seem hesitant. You said that you trust the Planning and Sustainability Commission decision. We feel you shouldn't trust it. Their decision won only by 1 vote. The commissioners were heavily influenced by a developer who consistently votes for policy that will make his business the most money. And they were persuaded by the chair, who claimed that there isn't a good view here. What does she know? She lives in Lake Oswego. Here's the view. It's stunning. It's used by Travel Portland as the iconic image marketing Portland around the world for conventions and tourism. It's crazy to decide that private profits are worth more than public access to this view, which is downtown's last public view of Mount Hood. CC 2035 removes 10 other views of Mount Hood from along the river, and we're only fighting for 1. We think we're being very reasonable by focusing only on the 1 big view to save. Travel Portland sent you a letter advocating to save this view, and we agree with them. Tourism brings billions of dollars to Portland, and most tourists go to this spot. It will only take lowering heights on a few properties. Vote for egalitarian access to the last public view of Mount Hood from downtown. Thank you, Commissioners Fritz and Udaly, for trying to protect this from happening with your amendment. This is what views of the Vista Bridge will be like with the proposed heights, but you call for going back to today's heights,
which many people have argued would allow for buildings to block the bridge. We're asking to lower heights slightly from what you've proposed, 25 feet from the bridge to Southwest 20th and 35 feet from 20th to 18th. And we're asking for the middle section of lowered heights to be wider, covering the entire block next to the bridge to the north and south of Jefferson, so that the bridge won't be walled in by buildings. Also, the view corridor from I-405 to the bridge was removed in a previous draft. It seems like language should be added back to make sure that I-405 to the bridge is clearly stated as a protected view. City Council already agreed to protect the view of the Vista Bridge when you adopted the West Quadrant Plan, one of its 5 urban design policies specifically named the Vista Bridge, and committed to elevate the presence, character, and role of this significant public view corridor which defines the district. Policy 5.4 of this draft commits to preserving views of the Vista Bridge. Policy 5.7 commits to preserving gateways. Please keep this magnificent gateway from being blocked by buildings. Please vote for the lower heights for at least 4 blocks near the bridge. We're asking for an amendment to protect today's view of Mount Hood from Vista Bridge and the view of the weather beacon. In this photo, the view is being used as a backdrop by a middle school's morning show. This vista from the Vista Bridge is important to Portland's sense of place. We are asking you to lower heights only slightly, 4 floors on approximately 8 properties. It won't take much. In order to be able to see the charming weather beacon from the Standard Insurance Building, it would only take this slight lowering of allowable height. Many residents have told us about walking across the bridge and looking to see what the weather beacon predicts. Go ahead.
On all views, it is shocking to see that the ESSE, Economic, Social, Environmental, and Energy Analysis, developed by BPS staff, has no metric to measure views that are so iconic that they've appeared on Portland postcards and promotional materials for over a century. In their analysis, private profits for developers will always be weighted more than the public good of egalitarian access to views. We appreciate Mayor Wheeler's amendment that fixes typos related to Goose Hollow and the historic district's incorrect heights. This is a simple oversight, and we're glad it was caught. As reported in the Northwest Examiner, the Ombudsman found that the West Quadrant Stakeholder Advisory Committee members, public officials, were unethical. They voted to give themselves millions of dollars by increasing heights on their own properties. You recently voted to require stronger ethics in stakeholder advisory groups. You said that knowing someone's conflict of interest was enough for you, that you would take care of the rest by voting in a way that understands that a conflict took place. So, you've been given overwhelming evidence that conflicts of interest took place during the Central City 2035 process, yet you haven't lowered the heights that these people voted to give themselves. You should rescind all heights given to these developers in this ethically compromised process. We don't think Portland should be doing business this way. We support Commissioner Fritz's amendment to reduce heights at the bridgehead, but we believe that many other heights were obtained in ethically compromised ways and should be rescinded. We've discussed these views in dozens of public meetings over a 3-year period. We've heard from our disabled and low-income residents that public access to views means a lot to them. Please represent all Portland residents and not just the developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next three, please.
Are Elizabeth Hart Morris, Donner Johnson, and Bob Solinger, and they'll be followed by 24, 25, and 26, Maria Cahill, Pat Lando, and Tom Lipton. Is this the first 21?
Oh, yeah, any seat's good. Thank you. Would you like to go ahead and start, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Elizabeth Hart Morris. I am a co-founder and the executive director of the Green Roof Info think tank, also called GRIT. GRIT is a Portland nonprofit dedicated to supporting the use of green roofs through education and outreach to heal our environment and to heal ourselves. On behalf of GRIT, we applaud and fully support the Council's inclusion of an eco-roof requirement in the Central City Plan. We support the Council's amendments adopted earlier this month, and GRIT also supports the recent inclusion of a rainwater harvest equipment in the 40% exemption, but no more. No more than the 40% is what I mean. GRIT is prepared to support the City of Portland, BPS, the development and design community, building owners, and install and maintenance contractors affected by the amendment. We provide green roof tours, education, research, as well as green roof symposia to help foster consistent adoption and use of green roofs across Portland. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment, and thank you so much for your influence on the future of Portland. Please feel free to contact GRIT for more information, research, and we also invite you all to join our spring green roof tours and presentations that GRIT will provide. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Does GRIT have a website that people could find out about that?
Greenroofthinktank.org. Greenroofthinktank.org.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you for my chance to be here. My name is Donner Johnson, and I'm a member of the South Downtown Neighborhood Development Coalition. I'm here to speak in opposition to Amendment 7, the River Place bonus height. This is an amendment which came into being, as I understand it, partly as a result of something called the Vision Booklet, which was distributed by NBR developers. I've looked at this booklet, or at least parts of it, and it has what I would call laudatory, maybe questionable information. For example, it shows buildings from a side view, and there are buildings in that side view that don't exist and might never exist. I understand that they're doing an assumption about 2035, but what it does is mitigate the actual effect, the step-down effect that we have all agreed on in document 2035. Secondly, I'd like to say that it's been said that this is not a case of spot zoning, but it obviously is a case of spot zoning since it's an exception to 2035, and it will definitely open the door to other developers who want to see if they can get the same kind of advantage. It reminds me of what happened in San Francisco when I lived there in the 60s and the Transamerica Pyramid was built, which pierced the written and unwritten agreements that citizens had about building height. And of course, anyone who's seen San Francisco knows what has happened there. Another question, and actually I have a question for all of you, and that is this. I understand that 500-odd rentals will be built. These are rentals, so the building is entirely rentals. Is there anything to prevent the developer from converting these to condominiums at some later date? Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Salinger. I'm the Conservation Director for the Audubon Society of Portland. We submitted some pretty extensive comments. I'll go through some of those today. First, we want to support Volume 2A, Amendment 8, the bird safe window standard amendments. That moves some of the technical details to administrative rules, but retains flexibility. We think that's the right way to go. So we encourage you to do that, but please don't put any additional restrictions beyond that. I think we can work out all the details in the administrative rules.
Bob, in terms of, and this won't count against your time, but in terms of preserving flexibility, how many different kinds of treatments are there out in the marketplace today?
There's probably about a dozen out there, and there's more coming on the market all the time.
So you want to have as much choice and flexibility as
We think it's important for developers. They serve different functions in addition to the bird safe goal, and we think it's important that developers have that flexibility to pick and choose, because some of them help with heating and cooling and other things as well, so aesthetics. So we think retaining flexibility for developers is an important aspect of this. Plus, the technology is changing. It's emerging quickly around this. It's an evolving field, and so keeping it in the administrative rules will allow us to add and subtract as new and better technologies come online.
And in response to the concern raised by Mr. Klotz earlier, some of these technologies do allow people to see in and out of the building?
They all allow people to see in and out of the building. Some of them are dots and lines on windows. It's things you see on buildings all the time right now. We've never heard of complaints around the country about those kinds of things. They're being instituted in a lot of cities right now. That's not why people can't see in and out. They're very minimal. They just break up the solid open glass field that birds crash into.
Thank you.
And there are some options that don't have any interference at all. Volume 2A, Amendment 9, Eco-Roos, we concur with GRID. I won't repeat those comments, but we concur with GRID. Please don't go any further than you're going right now. Volume 2B, 8, NATO Parkway expansion. We would urge you to look closely at the tree impacts on that. That's going to take out about 90 mature trees. And looking at the plans for that, we're concerned they're not going to be replaced with adequate replacements. It looks like 1-to-1 ratios and very small trees that won't have the same values. So if they're going to remove trees, one, we should try to avoid that too. We should make sure that we replace them adequately if we do have to remove some. Volume 2B, Amendment 2, Rose Quarter expansion. You've heard from a lot of people. We also oppose this project. We do think it's a boondoggle. We think it's not consistent with the city's equity and environmental goals. We encourage you to think hard about going forward. I think it's going to be a big waste of money, and it will eventually collapse under its own weight. But the fears will spend a lot of money getting to that point, so please do continue to look closely at that. Lastly, I want to express my appreciation to Commissioner Fish for 2 amendments, 5A, Amendments 1 and 3, that require the city to look at how we encourage development to move out of the floodplain and at how we deal with light pollution. Appreciate those being put in there, and really encourage the city to fund that in the next budget cycle so we can move forward on those 2 initiatives. So thank you.
Mayor, can I give a preliminary response to the gentleman who asked about condo conversion.
Yes.
So please don't take this as the final word, but my understanding is that under the inclusionary housing rules, a developer has to agree to a 99-year covenant of affordability. And that can't be just taken off because the developer sees an opportunity to convert to condos. That's the quid pro, that's required by the program. But I'll try to drill down a little further for you. But I want to give you reassurance that it is not a program set up that someone can just, at their discretion, forfeit the public benefit that is required and convert to condos.
Mm-hmm.
That would not be allowed.
I know that some cities have instituted punitive conversion costs, taxes, to prevent that kind of thing happening.
Well, it would be a violation of the covenant, and the council would,
in this case, yeah.
would in this case, not look favorably on that. I'm sure there's all kinds of remedies if you violate the covenant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, all three of you.
The next three are Maria Cahill, Pat Lando, and Tom Lipton. And they'll be followed by 27, 28, and 29, John Cumrine, Miles Sisk, and Aaron Brown.
Good afternoon.
Hi. My name is Maria Cahill, and I'm coming to speak on Volume 2A1, Amendment 9. I'm a program manager for RECODE, a Portland-based nonprofit funded to work on national efforts with a special focus on the West Coast. We work to accelerate the adoption of water reuse systems such as rainwater harvesting and gray and black water treatment. I'm testifying today to encourage you to incorporate water reuse regulations into the Central City 2035 plan and consider providing other permit pathways throughout the city that will allow us to use all kinds of water more than once in buildings. The steep roof exemption allows developers to use them to avoid building eco roofs. Requiring rainwater harvesting from steep slopes can bring new construction back into alignment with the CC 2035 goals and policies. We notice that water reuse policy language is mostly missing from the CC 2035 plan, and that even some barriers to it have been created, even though water reuse is a climate change resiliency tool that can help meet multiple goals. It can mitigate flooding, increasing storage capacity, and optimizing that storage using smart technology. Reused water requires a high level of treatment, so when it is discharged, it's highly protective of water quality and in-stream habitat. Low-carbon district energy systems can be enhanced with water reuse methane systems, which are already a cost-effective way for high-strength wastewater generators like breweries to save money on their sewer bills. Our very own Hasselo on 8th project in the Lloyd District demonstrates how water reuse can improve the pedestrian environment, reduce heat island effect, improve air and water quality, and create habitat for birds and pollinators. Even rain-soaked cities like Seattle now require rainwater harvesting. They know they must adapt to climate change by expanding their water portfolio. These cities are innovating to allow harvesting of stormwater, atmospheric condensate, and nuisance water, which is shallow groundwater that would flood buildings. 30 water experts from 13 states, including Oregon, serve on the National Blue Ribbon Commission for On-Site Non-Potable Water Systems and recently provided detailed guidance on a health-based approach for developing a water reuse permit program. Across the country, the accelerating adoption of water reuse systems is already happening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pat Lando. I'm a landscape architect with my own firm, Lando & Associates Landscape Architecture. I live in a house entirely covered by an eco roof and 400 square feet of living wall. And ever since Tom Lipton's retirement, I'm now one of the longest practicing eco roof consultants in the country, along with Charlie Miller. And in fact, early engineering of some soils are a result of our collaboration. So I'm here to testify on two issues, one Amendment 2A, number 9, the eco roofs, and a missing amendment for water reuse. First, I fully support staff's addition on the eco roofs to allow for, but I would like to allow for additions as submitted to you guys on attachment. My review of these amendment languages creates an unintentional loophole for developers by allowing steep roofs buildings to avoid meeting the goals and policies of the 2035 plan. The amendment also creates unintentional barriers not only to allow rainwater harvesting, but emerging technologies, but by achieving LEED in sustainable sites, the Living Building Challenge, and potentially other metric programs that support sustainability in high-performance buildings. In conversations with staff, we anticipate that rainwater harvesting can be allowed to resolve some of these conflicts, including the steep roof exemption, while still meeting the multi-benefits found in eco-roofs. With the addition of my proposed language submitted, the city can achieve its goals of Policy 2035 plan. The second issue is I'm requesting the commission to direct staff through a motion to add amendment to include water reuse in the 2035 plan. I submitted to you on a second page a draft language from Seattle and San Francisco's most recent codes that allow the adoption of this water reuse. The new amendments would address the 2035 goals and policy plans for resiliency, as well as building and infrastructure site development.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Lipton. I'm the guy that came up with the idea of using eco-roofs for stormwater management. While working for the Bureau of Environmental Services, I first became aware of this stormwater management technique in 1992. In 1996, I installed an eco-roof on my garage and tested its rain management performance. It worked like a charm, and BES has confirmed this during the ensuing years with many monitoring projects. In 1999, under Commissioner Saltzman's leadership, BES helped install an eco-roof on the Hamilton Apartments for stormwater research purposes. This was the first commercial eco-roof in Portland, and it was on an affordable housing building. Studies on the Hamilton eco-roof and others have provided BES with valuable information about stormwater, biodiversity, energy, and economic viability of eco-roofs. One thing I'd like to add into this part of my testimony is that I think there needs to be a really comprehensive comparison of many benefits that are associated with green infrastructure. This one associated with the discussion of harvesting and eco-roofs and how that might come about to better understand what those values are. Anyway, before retiring from BES, I invented an eco-roof design, non-proprietary, that does not require irrigation. BES has about a dozen buildings with this design. The design is starting to find favor with private developers, and it's simple and cost-effective. I say this because a lot of people talk about the cost of eco-roofs and irrigation and various other maintenance issues. These are important depending on the circumstances or the context of the development, but many developers will want to, as they are doing right now, just put a roof on it and let me go on my way. And that can be seen on Division, on Hawthorne, various other places where lots of apartment buildings are going up. I have visited U.S. cities, and I guess I'm almost done. I just want to say I very much confidently and wholeheartedly support the Eco-Roof Code amendments, and I really want to thank all of you for your service and your consideration. And I want to thank everybody in this room because this is democracy in action. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We appreciate it. Commissioner Fritz?
Yeah, I just wanted to say for those watching at home, sometimes we have people who testify, and I think people at home wonder, are they actually what they say they are, and you are actually what you say you are, Tom. Not only that, but you came to the Parks budget meetings this year, and that your ongoing public service is truly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks, all three of you. Commissioner Udaley.
I just have a quick question, actually. First of all, what a treat to have you here. Thank you for your innovation, early innovation.
Thank you.
I want to make sure that this eco-roof amendment is as strong as it can be, and I want to make sure that I understand the concerns about the steep roof exemption, because we have looked into this. So I'm going to read to you the staff response, and if you could give me some feedback, I would really appreciate that. So currently, developers are required to manage 100% of stormwater from rooftops, steep or flat. It's a sunk cost. It's less expensive to build a flat roof and use it to manage stormwater than to build a steep roof and find a different way to manage stormwater on site. BES will allow an eco-roof on a steep rooftop. It just requires more engineering. This is why we don't require it, but it's allowed. And also there was a concern that we would just have we would be requiring flat roofs all over the city, so we don't want to prevent people from building steep roofs. So is there language you're hoping that we're going to add or change? What's the remaining concern?
Go ahead.
Are you
And I
addressing?
understand that the harvesting rainwater that's really kind of a separate issue, or reuse of water is somewhat of a separate issue. I'm really wanting to focus on the eco roof.
So if you were just to address the steep roof and the eco roof situation, what I believe when I read it and I interpret this would be that to avoid the additional cost of putting on an eco roof, a developer could very easily then just create a pitched roof, a 25% or greater pitched roof, and not do anything that would contribute to the Central City 2035 plan, right? It wouldn't provide the multiple benefits of an eco roof, and they would just sort of walk away. You're not mandating that they basically provide an as equal benefit that you're requiring the rest of the eco roofs covering flat roofs.
Sure.
So you're missing that by simply allowing a developer to sidestep it by building a steep roof. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but Susan's shaking her head. I mean, the fact is a lot of developers want to have rooftop amenities, and I don't think that our eco roof requirement is going to dissuade them of creating these amenities, and many of them want to do eco roofs as well. And it's more expensive to gather the rainwater from a steep roof. I'm just
it's
not
the same.
sure. Okay, I don't think it is. I've got a bunch of shaking heads back there, but.
If I could just add, so a steep roof, it is more expensive to put an eco roof on that. And so that's perhaps why staff has said, well, you don't have to put it on a steep roof, just put it on a flat roof.
Yeah.
I really don't think it's necessary at all. Most of the buildings in the Central City area are not really going to be looking at building steep roofs, whether it's got an eco roof or not. My understanding of their point is that if you have this exemption, then people are going to take advantage of it.
That's right.
Maybe a few will. It's hard to understand how many people will take advantage of. It could be taken advantage of, though. So perhaps the best solution is just to delete it. Delete reference to the slope of a roof. The language that is here today says if that 40% can be used. And I also wanted to clarify that harvesting rainwater from an eco roof is also possible, especially this time of year. There is runoff from eco roofs during the wintertime, so they can get water that way too. Sure. So it could be as simple as just taking that off. It would address their concerns. And if somebody wanted to do a steep roof, they would have to look at the possibility of saying, well, it looks like we'd have to put an eco roof on it. And then they might say, well, maybe we don't want to do that and we'll just do a regular roof. Steep meaning above 25%. Eco roofs are not that hard on lower slope roofs.
Okay.
It's been my
Yeah,
experience.
so I agree with what Tom was saying.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, all three of you. Next three, please, Carla.
Are John Crumrine, Miles Sisk, and Aaron Brown, and they'll be followed by 30, 32, and 33. Marilyn Weber, Cliff Weber, and Greg Wimmer.
Oh, the person before me is not here?
I guess not. Go for it.
Oh, well, I wasn't quite ready to talk yet.
Lucky you.
But I'll get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Miles Sisk. I want to speak more specifically on 2A, Section 10, and height caps in general. I'm 23. I live here downtown. I'm a renter, like 87%, much like 87% of the downtown neighborhood as well. I'm a seventh generation Oregonian. My family came over on the Oregon Trail over 150 years ago and went south. I've got somewhere over 150 cousins back in the Rogue Valley. A lot of you city folk might not know this, but Portland for years has served as a beacon of hope and opportunity for my generation of rural Oregonians. Rural Oregon is gentrifying. There's not opportunity there for us anymore. There aren't jobs. There isn't much of an economy. Land prices are soaring because it's being bought up by people out of state. There's not a future for young rural Oregonians anymore. We're coming here. I came here 2 years ago for that opportunity as well. I know dozens of other young people just like me, people I went to high school with, people I went to college with, who are on the same track that I was. We're coming to Portland for opportunity, for hope, and for our chances. You're not going to hear us talking about height limits. You're not going to hear us talking about views. We're too busy trying to fight for a spot at the table in the first place. We're too busy trying to find a place in the city and our state that we've been looking to come to for years. We can't have that. We need more housing. 500 units of affordable housing were lost downtown when the Harrison Towers were converted from affordable housing to condominiums. If you're one of the people living in those towers and you're complaining about the loss of your view from the new River Place Tower, I happily welcome the new 500 units of affordable housing that would replace what you made us lose. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great testimony.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Brown. I'm a registered lobbyist of the No More Freeway Expansions Coalition, here to speak about Volume 2B. The $450 million 1.8-mile freeway expansion is not an improvement for the people biking and walking in the neighborhood. Who says so? The local neighborhood association, for one, and all of the active transportation groups that closely are following the municipal plans. We submitted a letter this morning detailing our specific concerns about the schematics. I trust that you and your staff will have a time to read it later, so I won't reiterate the points. PPS board member Paul Anthony and Chris Smith already ran them over. I encourage you to look at the letter. It includes comments from 293 other Portlanders who, in their wordiness, committed an extra 31 pages of comments on why this is not an improvement. Instead of reading the letter, I'll tell you a quick story. This Tuesday morning, we were serving some donuts and coffee on the Flint Avenue Bridge. I got to talk to a lot of people, many of whom I usually just spar with on the internet, and realized that we actually had a lot in common, and we had a good time. We got to talk about Damian Lillard's jump shot and a bunch of other nice things, talk to folks that were concerned about the Harriet Tubman Middle School. And it reminded me of a really rainy Sunday Parkways 2 years ago. It was the first chance I personally had a chance, Mayor Wheeler, to speak with you.
I remember it.
We had a conversation about the gas tax, and we were cordial, despite the fact I had been slagging you on Twitter all week. Commissioner Udaley, it was the first time I met you, and we had a conversation. I was delighted to learn that Reading Frenzy was a shop that I had visited, and it was cool to realize that you were running for office. That is what is at stake at this project, the ability to build communities where that sort of universe happens. When one looks at the project schematics, instead of ODOT's talking points, it's increasingly clear that this is a $500 million investment that is fundamentally antithetical to the type of community that we all claim that we are in support of. This project costs twice as much as a price tag to build sidewalks and crosswalks at every school in the entire Portland metropolitan region, twice as much. Our conversations today about density, transportation, and urban form are ultimately a question of how logistically and geometrically we build a city that all of us can afford to live in, can safely get to our jobs, and walk our kids to school. I'll close with a quick comment. If ODOT did get this design wrong, if ODOT did just flub this one, it's out of date, whatever, how would it look different than the community opposition that you've heard over the past 6 months? Thank you very much, and we're honored to continue to work with you on this project.
Thanks, both of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next three, please.
First, was there John Crumrine on Altamira? I missed him. Okay, then we'll go with Marilyn Weber, Cliff Weber, and Greg Wimmer. And they'll be followed by 34, 35, and 36, Josiah Failing, Zoe Lynn Powers, and Christy White.
Good afternoon,
Good
Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to Amendment 2A, number 20 and 21. Mayor Wheeler, I hope you vote for your own amendment to save the Mount Hood view at Salmon Springs. When I heard that the last public view of Mount Hood in downtown was being blocked by tall buildings, I was astonished. I wondered who came up with that idea. Then I began to realize that our planning commission decided that the needs of the developers outweighed the public good. They decided that having equity in access to views was less important than making those views only for the rich. Their charts carefully measured private profits that would be lost if we lowered heights to save views, but they don't have a measurement for what having one view of Mount Hood downtown and having today's view of Mount Hood from the Vista Bridge means to Portland. If you use this logic, then you'd build tall buildings around Big Ben in London and the Eiffel Tower in Paris. These striking landmarks define London and Paris. What defines Portland is Mount Hood. So you would be blocking Portland's Eiffel Tower if you block the last view of Mount Hood downtown. There's a reason that we have publicly accessible views. It's because Portland is the kind of city that doesn't believe that views of Mount Hood should only be for the rich. We are the kind of city that believes that a public view of Mount Hood should be accessible, should be egalitarian, should be something that can't be made private. I love to see the weather beacon as I cross the Vista Bridge. I love to see the lower slopes and the snow cap of Mount Hood. Proposed heights would block off the weather beacon and would only say views of the snow cap. Vista Bridge has a striking view because of the contrast between the low slopes and the snow cap. It would only take lowering heights 48 feet on 8 properties to save today's view of Mount Hood and the weather beacon. Please add an amendment to save this view that defines Portland. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to address the council. I am here to speak concerning the same 2 amendments. Let me say by way of preface on another subject, that on the subject of affordable housing, my condominium is less affordable than ever, and it's due entirely to property taxes, which rose 19% last year. So it does seem to me that affordable housing initiatives and inexorably rising property taxes are at cross purposes. Now, on the subject of the amendments, 10 years ago, my wife and I moved to Portland because the city was said to be special, enlightened, livable, ecologically aware. In all candor, now that 10 years have passed, Portland seems less special with every passing year. As the entire nation was shown on 60 Minutes, the problems afflicting American cities in general now plague Portland as well. These problems are intractable, and I am not here to talk about them. I do wish to submit, however, that destroying the assets that the city still retains seems an odd approach to mitigating Portland's problems. Rather, this will only add to them by hastening the day when Portland becomes just another generic American city whose residents flee to the suburbs. Like Mr. Josiah Failing, writing in the Portland Tribune 3 days ago, I too favor development in the central city on the condition that new buildings are well designed. At the same time, I also join Mr. Failing in asking how much longer before Portland ceases to be Portland. Like them, I applaud the enlightened women on City Council for their effort to honor the stewardship of past generations by preserving the views of Mount Hood and of Vista Bridge that visitors and residents alike are currently able to enjoy. There is already plenty of room for tall buildings without having to obliterate iconic views in order to accommodate more.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. My testimony is a response to Volume 2A, Amendment 21, View of Vista Bridge. My name is Greg Wimmer, and I'm a member of Jefferson Holdings, the owner of the property located on Southwest Jefferson and Southwest 18th, and also a business owner in the Goose Hollow neighborhood. During the Planning and Sustainability Commission work sessions, the Vista Bridge view from the Jefferson Street overpass was discussed in detail regarding the proposed height adjustment for development. City staff studied the view street extensively for the PSC and provided detailed recommendations based on precise measurements. City staff and PSC recommended a 75-foot maximum building height for our property.
which would allow for a typical 5/1 residential structure. The 75-foot building height was also proven not to block the view of the Vista Bridge. The PSC reviewed the data and voted to approve the 75-foot building height at this location. With the Goose Hollow Max Stop directly across the street from our property, it provides an ideal location for multifamily housing. This position is strongly supported by TriMet and City Council with the intent of clustering development around Max Stops. Please see the attached letter from TriMet. This location is a clear example of an economic and social opportunity for multifamily housing directly next to a Max Stop. Voting for this amendment would be a complete reversal and rejection of the work done by city staff and the PSC. We ask the City Council to affirm and support the recommendations from the city staff and PSC by voting no on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all three of you.
Next three are Josiah Failing, Zoe Lynn Powers, and Christy White. And they'll be followed by Aisha Lorenz, Lee Doss, and Bill Failing.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I think I'm next. I'm Josiah Failing. I'm be talking about Volume 2A, Part 1, 20, and 21. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and council members. I'm here today to talk a bit about the past, a bit more about the future. In 1858, one of my ancestors sent a letter enticing her East Coast cousin to visit the then new town of Portland. Though 'tis wet and rainy, it does not affect one as you would naturally suppose. Rain or mud over ankle is no obstacle if we wish to visit or do shopping. I think you would come on and behold the beauties and wonders of Portland for yourself. The view is most magnificent. The valleys, inland lakes, and snow-clad mountains are at once revealed in this extended landscape, and overall is spread a glorious canopy of the most ethereal blue, brilliantly clear air, as pure as the mountain's snow. Can you resist so much? Though a bit
Writing for Travel Portland. The blue, yes, remember the blue?
Though a bit older in prose, this letter reminds me of the New York Times and BuzzFeed articles we've all seen in the past 10 years touting Portland's unique landscape and character. Today I'm speaking specifically about two viewpoints that I feel are an essential part of the character of Portland: the views of Mount Hood from both the Salmon Springs Fountain and the Vista Bridge. Back in my namesake's era, one could likely view Mount Hood from the entirety of the waterfront, especially considering mud over ankle is no obstacle. Losing views of Mount Hood has been an unfortunate consequence of growth since then, which makes preserving the remaining views all the more important. I sincerely applaud the effort that has gone into crafting the 2035 plan, but I'm here to remind you of the long-term value these unique natural resources bring. Consider the ramifications of gradually obstructing views of Mount Hood. Will we eventually be just another cookie-cutter metropolis with high-rise buildings lining a river downtown? Let's take a look back towards the days when Portland was heralded as the trailblazer in urban planning. Tough decisions are required to protect what we have. If we continue to consider economic growth potential as the most important criteria for our city of the future, how much of Portland will we have left? I'd like for my children, and their East Coast cousins to view the sentinel of our city, that is Mount Hood, from these historically meaningful locations. Thank you.
Josiah, can I just ask you, because I'm trying to keep your distinguished family tree straight, what's your relationship to Bill Failing?
Bill Failing's my dad.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good afternoon.
Proud dad, no doubt.
Proud dad.
Good afternoon. Zoe Powers on behalf of Zidell Yards. I'm here to express support for two amendments to help facilitate the Zidell Yards master plan, particularly related to the adaptive reuse of the barge building. The first, which is listed as Amendment 1 of Volume 2A, Part 1, relates to the eastern section of the barge building. The current code has the unintended consequence of drawing the greenway setback line, which is 100 feet from top of bank, directly through the barge building, precluding any additional height. The reason for this anomaly is that the top of bank line was originally drawn up and around the man-made slipway that launched the Zidell barges, even though the actual water line extends only a short way up the slipway. This creates a second setback along the north-south axis, where there's already an east-west setback from the actual river. The oddly located north-south setback is not providing a height setback from the river, because the river also runs north-south. This has the effect of significantly reducing the height of the buildings around the slipway, even though they are not adjacent to the river. To allow the adaptive reuse illustrated in the Zidell Master Plan, this amendment would establish a new height reference line that follows the top of Bank Line, except where it crosses across the slipway. I want to emphasize that any height around the slipway will be set back from the actual river in the same way as all of the other buildings along the river are set back. The second amendment, which is listed as Amendment 6 in Volume 2A, Part 1, relates to the western section of the barge building. The current barge building footprint is over 80,000 square feet, and a likely tenant type in the barge building may need 50,000 square feet or more of that space for an adaptive retail reuse. The current code limit on retail in the south waterfront is 40,000 square feet. The amendment would change the 40,000 square foot cap for permitted retail use to 50,000 square feet, but retain the current conditional use cap of 60,000 square feet. It's a modest change in the code that will facilitate the reuse of the existing barge building. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Mayor, if I could, we had testimony earlier from the Regional Arts and Culture Council about public art and some development, and Zidell was mentioned. Could you share with us the opinion you have on that question?
On public art, I know the Zidell family is very much in support of public art, and that Charlene Zidell's been working to create a master plan for the property to think about public art sort of in a broader context rather than on a parcel by parcel basis.
Okay, so we've been asked to craft an amendment based on something RAC testified about, so we may need to talk to you to make sure we get it right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Christy White, here to testify on Amendment 18 for Mr. Menashe. The Planning and Sustainability Commission reduced Mr. Menashe's base height from 350 feet to 125 feet, which was a loss of 225 feet on a single parcel. Recognizing this, BPS offered a compromise of 160 feet, restoring 35 of the 225-foot loss, and we appreciate that effort. However, we would like to offer a different compromise. The 160 feet utilized by BPS was based on a datum point for another nearby building and the notion that 160 feet might be more in line with the character of the historic district. The problem with that is that rationale is totally unrelated to our existing base height of 350 feet. And the selected height reduction is a datum point from a single building that wasn't built under the current zoning and has no relation to the efforts, objectives, and goals of the 2035 regulatory environment. For example, inclusionary housing was not in place when that single datum point was constructed, nor was the city nor the owner of this property faced with the kind of issues that we face today to resolve the housing crisis. So a height of 160 feet forces a building that it will be built to the property lines in a muscular form. And the reason for that is because we have a base FAR of 9-to-1 and a bonus opportunity of 3-to-1 because of inclusionary zoning. To use that within 160 feet, you're going to build a muscular form to the property lines. That muscular form will not necessarily be set back from the Chinese garden. Instead, we can minimize our height loss at 250 feet, and that allows you a more sensitive and slender building form that is opportunities to utilize that 3-to-1 inclusionary housing bonus and set it back from the Chinese garden. The point is we can accept some loss in height and even significant loss in height. We can meet you halfway. We can accept a maximum base and bonus height of 250 feet. This will be a 100-foot loss in base height rather than the 190-foot loss BPS has proposed. We can also accept a loss of all of our bonus height potential. This compromise would at least protect a reasonable unit count, encourage sensitive design options, and preserve property tax and SDC revenues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry for going over.
Next three, please.
Are Aisha Lorenz, Lee Doss, and Bill Failing, and they'll be followed by 40, 41, and 47. I believe the first name is Jeff Friendbing, maybe, John Hollister, and Jan Pettit.
And I don't know, Carla, are there still people in the overflow rooms?
They're going to check.
There's several seats here if people want to come in. Good afternoon. Would you like to start, please?
Hello, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. I'm Aisha Lorenz, Secretary for Swirl Neighborhood Association and Library for Muslim Community of Portland, and they both support me in this. The reason I decided to go door to door in very cold weather last month and ending up getting 180 signatures is because of my shock that people just weren't aware of the view of Mount Hood from Salmon Springs Fountain and of our beloved Vista Bridge were threatened by the possibility of even taller buildings. They're already too numerous in front of them. I just couldn't sit by passively. I've lived in Portland since 1960. My grandparents, early German settlers, who said Portland's country was God's country, so they stayed here. Forming Lorenz Brothers builders who drove up and down historic Vista Bridge frequently while building in downtown and Portland Heights, overlooking beautiful Mount Hood. How can we allow this to happen when those who came before us loved it as much as we do? It's what Portland is known for. Mount Hood from Salmon Springs Fountain is frequently on the travel brochures, and the charming weather beacon that looks like a car antenna is a popular icon too. Portland's tourism industry brought $5.2 billion in direct spending to us last year. How do you think people will feel after traveling here and then the gorgeous views are obstructed? Hard to believe a democratic society would allow preference to a builder over hundreds, likely thousands of Portlanders who the view matters to. Extra housing, does he say? Most people wouldn't be able to afford to live in those high-rises. Select few, while the majority would be deprived of relaxing views that lessen stress. Please don't privatize the view for a select segment of society. This is not what Portland stands for. Portland and we care for the good of all, not a select segment.
Thank you. And if I could just put out there, and people can feel free to comment on this, this isn't done for developers, at least from my perspective. This is done for more housing. And now, thanks to the good work of Commissioner Saltzman and others, we have the inclusionary housing requirement. So when housing gets built in this city, there will automatically be the requirement for affordability. So every development that happens, yes, developers certainly make money, but there will also be affordable housing, workforce, and lower income housing that results. And so I want to be very clear, that is my objective here. I'm not here to make people wealthy. Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Lee Doss. I have appreciated and been honored to work with or for all of you over decades. I've lived here for over 40 years and graduated from high school in Europe before raising my 4 children here in the public schools, in the trenches of the public schools, in the neighborhoods, being very civically involved during all of this time. And I just want to echo on 20 and 21 what's been said that was positive. I was asked to come at the last minute and didn't prepare, but I just have appreciated so much each of you showing high integrity and leadership in a city that is watched globally beyond what you can imagine. I was born in Tidewater, Virginia, gave up a scholarship to William and Mary to go to U of O because this is where I wanted to raise my family. And I'm still here. My kids have all gone to the public universities out here. So I care about Portland being more than just what I've personally seen in the belly of the beast around here. You know, I understand the perspective of developers. I have an international business. Our big family home had endless exchange students. Our kids were in Spanish immersion together. You know, I mean, I really care about the global perspective and want to speak for that a little bit by being here, because it isn't just 90 days a year that you see Mount Hood. I've taken all these endless visitors from around the world to see the sunset view almost every day. It's rare that you don't see the sunset view when you're walking downtown. And so even though we all care about that, I mean, all my kids were raised at the Unitarian Church. You can imagine the social justice aspect of this that is important to me. I mean, I think having that public view of Mount Hood, it's not an exaggeration to call it a social justice issue, in addition to being a business person and caring very much that these friends who want to invest in Portland see all these obstacles. So I'm just wanting to support you all finding another way so that you can do both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Failing, recently exposed father of Josiah Failing.
Do you have anything to add to his superb testimony?
Well, I do. Thank you, Commissioner. And this is what I do have to add, is not just my own opinion, but I've been authorized by the Swirl Board to read this on their behalf today. So this really is from the Swirl Board, of which I am one of the members of. Dear Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners, please consider our support to preserve the iconic views of Mount Hood and the Vista Bridge for all Portland residents and visitors. These views are threatened by proposed building heights under CC 2035. The Swirl Board strongly supports the height limits in these three corridors. Coming up. View of Mount Hood from Salmon Springs Fountain. View of Vista Bridge from I-405 down Southwest Jefferson. View of the weather beacon and lower slopes of Mount Hood from the Vista Bridge. That one kind of surprised me, but there's quite a constituency for that. We have gathered a petition with names and addresses of 176 people from Portland and surrounding areas who support preservation of the above views, the aforementioned views. Not only do the scenic views of our iconic Mount Hood and Vista Bridge contribute to the quality of life for Portland residents, they are also important tourist attractions. It's vital to preserve them. Portland has become a popular destination to visitors from all over the world. Their tourist dollars support our local economy. Thank you for your consideration. Nancy Seaton and John Newman, Swirl co-presidents. I too am very much a supporter of development in Portland, and I agree with Mayor Wheeler. I think that downtown is a terrific place to expand that density. But I think that it has to be selective, and I think that with height considerations in mind, it's extremely important. And I really want to say this, that I think it's important that we don't have developers on the same committees that are making these decisions. Yeah. I think it's church and state here. And I just think that it bothers me, frankly, that there is that kind of interaction. There should be a purity to what planning is doing. I was with one very well-known developer yesterday, and I just told him I was going to be testifying today. He's a name you all know. He did a lot of development in Northwest Portland. And he said, Bill, there's something wrong in planning that allow these things to happen. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And it raises an interesting issue because as the prior testimony indicated, it creates at least a perceived conflict, if not a direct conflict. And really the hard trade-off we're going to have to make here, at least on this view issue, is view versus housing. That's the trade-off, and it's a really hard trade-off. And that's why I put the amendment on, because I like the view too. I think it's I agree with you, it's an iconic view. But I also understand that we are in a housing crisis in this city that's going to continue into the foreseeable future. So the question is, how do we trade these off? How do we weigh them? How do we achieve all of our goals?
We respect that.
And there's, in some of these cases, and I appreciate actually where we are in this process, because we're honing down on some very, very specific issues today. We're not discussing broad issues anymore. We're discussing very, very narrow issues, which means we're getting down to the real nut of the subject here, which is good. So I appreciate that testimony.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next three are John Hollister, Jan Pettit, and we're going to go with Mary Coolidge in that group. And they'll be followed by Michael Mahaffey, Brad Molson, and I believe the first name is Dave Yates.
Very good. Carl, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could I just get a quick time check here? How many more people do we have?
I've got 2 full pages here of about 19. I don't know if there's more pages out there or not.
19 times 2, so 40-ish minutes. Okay, good, very good. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Joan Pettit. I've lived in Portland since 2009, and today is my first time in City Hall and my first time testifying.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm a resident of the Elliott neighborhood. I am a daily bicycle commuter, and I'm also the mother of 2 sons, one of whom will, fingers crossed, attend Harriet Tubman Middle School in the fall. I agree with my neighborhood association that the I-5 freeway expansion will not improve my neighborhood. but instead will worsen air pollution for Elliott residents and for children at Tubman. The City of Portland and State of Oregon have only begun to acknowledge, never mind make amends for, the devastation inflicted when the I-5 freeway construction tore a hole through the center of the city's vibrant African-American community. This project will perpetuate and grow that devastation through increased air pollution and the removal of the Flint Street overpass, an excellent low-stress cycling route I use daily. The proposed bridge for bikes will be too steep for all but the hardiest of cyclists. The caps and other service street changes are not an improvement and do not offset the additional pollution. Freeway expansion has never solved congestion, which means that this project of $450 million will be an expensive, polluting misuse of funds that could better go to solve our city's many real traffic safety problems. I want Portland to be a leader in fighting climate change and creating a healthy, livable city for all of our residents, including my neighbors and children in Elliott. I am particularly concerned about the negative impact on Tubman kids, many of whom come from our city's most vulnerable populations that have been least served by the schools in the city. This project will worsen congestion and pollution and harm our quality of life and our children's education. I urge you to remove the I-5 freeway expansion from the TSP.
Very good, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Mary Coolidge. I work for Audubon Society of Portland. I'm here to testify on Amendment Number 8, Bird Safe Window Standard, Volume 2A, Part 1. Audubon strongly supports the Bird Safe Window Standard Amendment in the Central City 2035 Plan. In adopting the Bird Safe Glazing Standard, Portland joins 13 other municipalities in North America that have already implemented bird safe building requirements. That includes San Francisco and Toronto. The standard itself has been written to dovetail with goals for ground floor transparency and street activation. Adoption of this amendment moves technical details of how to achieve that bird safe standard into an administrative rule, which allows BPS to provide more detailed information and direction on when and where specific materials are appropriate to be used. It also provides flexibility for developers and designers on material selection. A menu of material options will facilitate compatibility between active ground floor use and reducing collision risk for birds. This will also include a limited menu of products that are appropriate for ground floor use in order to maximize transparency, and some creating as little as 6% pattern density on the window, so really low pattern density. This amendment also creates flexibility to add and remove materials to the list as the bird safe glazing industry evolves. We imagine that there will be a lot more materials that are available in the future. We urge you to adopt the bird safe glazing amendment as proposed. I also just want to take a moment to thank Commissioner Fish for bringing Light Pollution Amendment 3 in Volume 5A, which calls for the initiation of dark skies research by staff looking at best practices to reduce the impacts of light pollution on human health and also wildlife and ecological health. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
My name is John Hollister, and just before I start, a clarifying question. Now, do you get 2 minutes per amendment that you're going to talk about? Is that the way? I misunderstood.
John, you have a special relationship with the mayor. He'll give you whatever you want.
Okay, all right, good. Now that we got that cleared up. Actually, I want to talk about, if you want to talk about first item number 20, the view of Mount Hood from Salmon Springs, iconic view, public access, most visited park in the city. And of the 5 Mount Hood views from the waterfront park, it's the least economic impact. And I think just the we need, as you're balancing the density with the view corridors, I think that is one to highly consider. I also want to speak in support of the Volume 5A, number 7 on the Centennial Mills, the public open space, the pedestrian connectivity. I'm very much in favor of that. And then I was looking for another amendment I proposed on September 14th, CC Northwest 08, and I looked all the way through the white sheet and I didn't find it. Then I went to the green sheet to see if it was in late breaking news, but no, it wasn't there either. And so I was perplexed, and the So yeah, I'm just a little flustered. So I'll just kind of segue. It's Commissioner Fish, I want to thank you personally for bringing the city one of the most beautiful parks in all of Portland, Fields Park. And it is visited by thousands of people from all areas of Portland. It has an iconic view of the largest, most expensive piece of public art in all of Portland, the Fremont Bridge. At $82 million in 1973, with a 4% inflation rate in today's dollars, that would be $450 million. And Stan Pinkin just sent me the name of a piece of art that was just sold in November. Do you know what that piece of art was? It was ask me a question real quick.
What was the piece of art?
The piece of art, not to use my time, is the Defendus Salvador Mundi. That's close. And can you imagine having a big building painted right in the middle of that? I can't. So there are only two pieces of property that are affected in this particular view corridor. And Mayor Wheeler, as my favorite mayor ever, I would like to request that you consider sponsoring this view corridor and getting it in onto the March 17th so we can have some public debate on it.
We'll look into it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it. It's good seeing you, John. Thank you, all three of you.
The next group is Michael Mahaffey, Brad Molson, and I believe it might be Dave Yates. Dan, sorry, Dan, thank you. And then they'll be followed by Brad Perkins, Paul Riopel, and Cheryl Vitaliano. And after them, after this group, there are 25 more names on the list.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the Commission. And I'm Michael Mahaffey. I'm president of the Goose Hollow Neighborhood Association. And I know our board is grateful for your considering a number of amendments, Mayor Wheeler, on Salmon Springs and Vista Bridge. I think we all recognize that we need more housing in this city. The issue really is the quality of new development and whether we're taking an evidence-based approach to make sure we're making the right decision. You've got tough decisions. We understand that. I'm speaking today for myself, and I'd like to address Volume 2A, Amendments 20 and 21 on views, and speak in the larger context of the slow but growing privatization of the urban commons within our city and in many cities. In my current work with UN Habitat in implementation of the new urban agenda, which is a very interesting, exciting development, I think, the quality of public space is looming as a central issue. High-quality public space is now understood as key for equitable access for all, for social interaction and physical well-being, for equitable economic opportunity and prosperity, and for environmental sustainability. And I'm sorry to say that around the world today, public space is under grave threat from privatization, that is, from selling off the urban commons to private interests, sometimes for the best of apparent reasons at the time, and that's why these decisions are tough and need to be thought about carefully. Views, sunlight, and sky are an integral part of this urban commons, the public spaces that we all own, essentially. When a public view from Salmon Springs to a beautiful mountain or Vista Bridge is privatized within new buildings, someone is temporarily enriched in that case, but the entire city is permanently impoverished a little bit more. Bit by bit, we lose our heritage, our livability, and our collective urban treasure. One day we look up and realize we no longer recognize our city, and then it's too late and we're all the poorer for it. So in closing, I think it's vitally important for Portland to show global leadership and resist this insidious degradation of our public space commons. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Brad Malson, President of the Central East Side Industrial Council and Beam Development. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I'm here to talk about a lot of the issues that you've already heard. Housing is absolutely a must issue, but also jobs. We have spent, and I guess the word that I want to focus on is compromise, because we participated in a multi-year Central City planning exercise, 2035 plan, and a Southeast Quadrant plan with Bureau of Planning and Sustainability in a really a Portland style. We brought people in, people commented. This was hours and days and weeks and months and years of public testimony, of compromise, of talking about what would work and what wouldn't work. And then, you know, centered around this, we've been building a transportation infrastructure to support density. So I understand views. I live in the Central East Side. I understand, you know, when towers go up, blocking views going to the west, going to the east. But how do we kind of look in the rearview mirror here once we've reached a sense of compromise on how to navigate development? And without the density to take advantage of the investment in public transportation, both for jobs and for housing, I'm kind of not following the lines. And I'm from New York. I grew up in Brooklyn. A lot of you know that. And I mean, views are compromised all the time to achieve additional jobs and housing and everything else. So I respect the people who come here and are passionate about the community, are passionate about being part of Portland. But I have to question why we are readdressing this when we've already reached a sense of compromise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfectly timed.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Remember, I used to testify here without glasses. My name is Dan Yates with the Portland Spirit. Been involved in the 2035 process for many years, and I have to say I'm extremely disappointed where we've ended up, purely from where we are in relationship to river-related and river-dependent development. I have 6 quick points. I'm going to race through them. First, the Tapa Bank issue is the way that they want to change it will now take my property, which I've been through 3 greenway permits, now make me non-conforming. That will be true for everybody else who has been through the process because it's a rather major change. The new greenway trail will be moved from starting at the Tapa Bank for the first 25 feet to now 50 feet to 75 feet. This will mean that every time someone develops, the trail will now become disconnected. And the code doesn't allow for the east-west connection. It's only a north-south code. For the life of me, I can't understand how we've spent the last 25 years building the trail. Now you want to create a checkerboard. The city continues in its planning process to ignore State Goal 15, the Greenway Code, and how it relates to river-related and river-dependent development. And specifically, our property is targeted for a terminal so that we can actually activate the river for more than just, for more opportunity in the way of transportation, overnight boats, things like that. And this terminal is specifically not allowed to have any offices. I can't imagine building an airport without offices. I can't imagine City Hall without offices. How can you manage things without the right to do it? I can't, for the life of me, understand why the city would want to get involved in the dredging permit process. And originally, the first draft of the 2035 plan had the Marine Transportation Security Act of 2002 incorporated into it. All that has been removed. The last issue is the most important to me, and that is the city has, for the last 20 years, ignored Supreme Court and Ninth Circuit rulings related to greenway trails. And I do not want the city to end up like Tigard, Eugene, and Forest Grove, by refusing to incorporate Supreme Court tests that are over 20 years old into their planning code that have resulted in over $10 million in fines to other Oregon cities.
Dan, I had promised you that I would get a meeting with you and with our bureau. Has that been scheduled?
February 2nd.
Very good. I look forward to that.
Because we both know that planners are not attorneys and city attorneys are not specialists in this area. And so I'm bringing my attorneys who are specialists in this, and hopefully we can avoid the city falling into this trap, because it is a big problem staring at you.
All right, thank you, and I
Thank
look
you.
forward to that.
Yeah, I look forward to the
Thank
meeting.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks all three of you for your testimony. Next three, please.
Are Brad Perkins, Paul Rylepel, and Cheryl Vitaliano, and they'll be followed by 52, 53, and 54, Bob Bernstein, Emerald Bogue, and Cal Toff.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Vitaliano, and I want to thank all of you for your stamina, except for Mayor Wheeler, who just left.
He just had, we're not taking a break, we call it a compassion break, so we're not doing one where we all leave, we're just going to take it in turns.
I am.
He'll be right back.
I had written all of you, and I want to thank Ms. Fritz.
Really
Thank
fast.
you, Mayor. Thank you.
I'm listening.
I want to thank Ms. Fritz for writing me back, because I'm talking today about Central City District, the amendments 7, 10, and 12. And we've been hearing some passionate discussion about views and access to the waterfront and the possibility of a wall of high-rises in front of our river. And one of the reasons that I stayed here today is because no one has brought up the safety issues of what can happen if we actually build 8 high-rises and the possibility of between 5,000 and 7,000 people. And someone mentioned the possibility of Hood River being in this very small area. What I envision in case of an emergency is how are they going to evacuate? Most of us remember the floods of 1996. Chloe, you probably were in high school then.
No.
No?
I was hoping that my bookstore wouldn't end up underwater.
Okay, well, I remember boats being tied up to McCormick and Schmidt's at the River Place. So it isn't a matter of if, it's when. And if a tsunami does come, and it does come down the Willamette River, how are the people going to evacuate? And I think that needs to be included as part of this plan of, right now, there is one narrow road to leave. So I'd like you to also consider that. Thank you.
That's a good point. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Paul Riepel. I'm a resident of Northeast Portland, and thank you, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, for giving us this opportunity. And we're here to address it is Volume 2B, Item 6 on the TSP project list, the Sullivan's Gulch Trail. And Brad Perkins and I are members of the Sullivan's Gulch Trail Committee, and specifically the Lloyd Boulevard alignment. We're here to speak in opposition to the Lloyd Boulevard alignment. And I'm making reference to the Green Route resolution sponsored by Mayor Wheeler on December 16th, 2017. Be it further resolved that BPS and other city agencies are authorized to continue to work with community partners on similar open space projects and active transportation circuits, such as Lentz Green Ring, Sullivan's Gulch Trail. And we are fully in support of Sullivan's Gulch Trail. It is the Lloyd Boulevard alignment that we oppose. And I've submitted some letters, and one of them is from another member of the Sullivan's Gulch Trail Committee, John Fruing. And we have some significant safety concerns that the alignment to Lloyd Boulevard would cause cycle crossings at MLK Boulevard and Grand Avenue, which are significantly congested areas, and congestion will increase in those areas, and bicycle safety will be significantly compromised. We instead support a proposal to actually put the Sullivan's Gulch Trail undergrade underneath the MLK and Northeast Grand Avenue bridges and connect with the steel bridge, and which would be more aligned with the Vision Zero plan for bicycle and pedestrian safety. And I will turn it over now to Brad Perkins. He'll use my remaining 9 seconds and talk about the rest. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I can get a few seconds of Jack Fruing, who couldn't stay as well. He has testimony that I'll relate to here. Thank you for the time. Again, I'm going to speak to the opposition to 2B6 regarding Sullivan's Gulch Trail alignment with Lloyd Boulevard. Safety should be the utmost goal when planning bike corridors. Safety has been Sullivan's Gulch's committee's overriding concern for the past 11 years in its attempt to work with Portland Bureau of Transportation to implement an off-street trail between Gateway Green and Willamette River. The Trail Committee generated concept plan approved by the City Council on July 25th, 2012 via Resolution 36947 directs city staff to allocate funds and continue working on this viable and safe corridor for bicycles and pedestrians, to travel slightly under all I-84 viaducts for easiest access to major north-south bike corridors. Unfortunately, for the past 6 years, PBOT's senior staff has ignored funding and development directives by the City Council for the Sullivan's Gulch Trail. The trail has documented community support from 15 neighborhood associations, three neighborhood coalitions, many businesses. The Trail Committee offered to raise over $1 million, but fundraising and negotiations with Union Pacific Railroad cannot begin until PBOT moves forward on funding the initial 95% publicly owned corridor segment between 21st and Willamette River. A catalyst project, the bike and pedestrian Sullivan's Gulch Bridge over I-84, is a perfect opportunity to begin development of this corridor segment by landing it on the north bank 15 feet below Lloyd Boulevard, with connecting ramps to both Northeast 7th and 9th. Most importantly, this initial Sullivan's Gulch Trail segment avoids dangerous arterial traffic corridors by safely directing people underneath Grand Avenue MLK Boulevard. Unfortunately, during PBOT's initial bridge planning process, it is obvious that safety or saving money is not PBOT's main goals. For example, senior PBOT staff and KPFF engineering have not considered a 60-foot shorter 8th to 8th bridge span that would save $1.5 million connect directly to the Sullivan's Gulch Trail. If there was a change of priority by PBOT to develop the the safest bike and pedestrian corridors that are off the street, or enforced Resolution 36947, reordered by you people, the trail's initial segment could take this $1.5 million in savings and combine it with $2 million meant for the trail from Prosper Portland and reallocate $2 million of the Multnomah Street bike lane upgrades and $1 million for Lloyd Boulevard sidewalk from TSP improvement funds and invest it in $6.5 million in a safe trail corridor. I'm trying to work this for you so it makes it real easy for you to
We've got it. You're
accept.
getting way down into the details. I think it's an interesting concept. I'd like to learn more about it. So you have my word. I will absolutely look at it, and I'll be in touch with the city planners about it as well.
Lastly, if this is going to meet Vision Zero, I can't think of a better way to do it. It's an action program that will help move that mission along, and I appreciate the time.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate your time, and thank you for the written testimony.
The next three are Bob Bernstein, Emerald Bogue, and Cal Toth, and they'll be followed by 55, 56, and 57, Melanie Yu, Douglas R. Allen, and Barbara Shaw.
Okay, and I'll start.
Please.
I'm Robert Bernstein. I've met most of you. I met you at the Sequoia protest. Commissioner Udaley, nice meeting you for the first time. So I basically back everything that Bob Salinger said about trying to maintain big trees, and reuse of water is going to be critically important. Even this year, Commissioner, even though it's raining today, I think our snowpack is about 30-something%, and maybe it'll get up to 60% of average after this weekend. So My biggest concern is the logical model that people use for reducing house prices. You seem to be focused on a closed system, which would be if these 3 chairs were for sale and you had maybe 5 people waiting for them and you built 2 more chairs, seemingly the price should go down, as long as there's no price fixing by developers. I don't know. But in an open system, where you have a line going, filling up this room, extending out the doors, round the street, with more and more people coming into wealth every day in this country and in other countries, that is an open system. So you're focusing on supply where the demand is as important. The only thing, in my opinion, that's going to drive prices down is either we become so crowded and untenable, if that's a word, untenable, but anyway, unlivable, or we become the same as other cities on the West Coast. That's how it works in my world. And I would urge you to speak to some logic teachers about open and closed systems.
Very good, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, almost evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Emerald Bogue, and I'm with the Port of Portland. Here today to testify on language found in the commentary regarding top of bank. Specifically, we're concerned about Major Amendment 6, measuring top of bank, and the potential implications for hundreds of acres of port-owned facilities located in the north reach of the Willamette River. For some context, here's a map that shows port properties in the north reach versus the central reach, and I will hand this to the council clerk. I will hand many of them to the council clerk. Oh, no, it's okay. It's all right. I'll take one of them, though. All right. Anyway, everything that's blue is Port of Portland property. There's a great deal of it in the north reach, no worries. So the issues we have today are really twofold. One is that the commentary in Major Amendment 6 calls for consistent application of this top of bank code when plans are updated for the north reach. So that's thing one. Thing two is that we learned of this a few days ago. So to be clear, we did provide written testimony on Central City 2035 to BPS in 2016. BPS staff were responsive to our concerns. The language I'm referring to now is new to us. So our ask is pretty simple. It's to modify the commentary and code to only apply to the central reach and refrain from committing to other plans. You know, we know that the Willamette River has a really broad constituency, and we're all on board in making sure that it works for everyone who uses it. But we know that it works differently in different parts of the river. Applying this code to the North Reach is a big deal. The city shouldn't attempt to do it without, at the very least, engaging property owners, including the Port of Portland. We're confident that we could come to the right solution for the North Reach, but we would love to do that in the actual North Reach process and not be prescriptive in this particular plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So my name is Cal Toth. I'm from Goose Hollow. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm speaking to number 20 and 21 to do with views. I'm going to be very brief. I've got an email that covers what I'm going to say in a little bit more elaborately and coherently, maybe. CC 2035 provides lots of opportunities, after all, for developers to build both affordable and unaffordable housing. You know, both are happening. I think we should be more strategic and less political. Surely we can protect our iconic views and still develop what we really need. So I'm saying let's be more careful. Let's not tamper with our valuable heritage. Let's protect our views of Mount Hood and Vista Bridge. We can do this. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I'll send the email in.
Great, and thank you for coming in, and thanks for your patience, all of you who are near the bitter end here.
The next three are Melanie Yu, Douglas R. Allen, and Barbara Shaw, and they'll be followed by 58, 59, and 60, Jeff Merrick, Haitham Toulon, and Matt Hill.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here to ask for your support for Amendments 20 and 21. Well, basically, I echo the sentiments of Hosea Failing's article in the Portland Tribune and others who have spoken today. Portland will not be Portland without the unobstructed, majestic view of Mount Hood. I moved here last year, and I chose Portland because of its great natural beauty. As a visitor since 2011, I enjoyed all the urban amenities the city had to offer. However, it was this incredible public views from Vista Bridge, the riverfront, and Washington Park that, without a doubt, formed my decision to permanently move here. Now, every guest that visits, I get to host, that gets that same tour without fail, and they instantly fall in love with PDX right away. I grew up in San Francisco, another city with iconic views. But even those nuts in California wouldn't consider putting up tall buildings in front of the Golden Gate Bridge or Half Dome in Yosemite because it makes no sense from a public relations standpoint. Good restaurants, music, and shopping are now everywhere in the US, and they are not enough to draw the multitudes you desire or predict. Please don't forever destroy what is uniquely Portland. After all, who wants to live or visit a city and pay taxes to look at a bunch of giant glass buildings? No one. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Mayor Wheeler and members of the council, my name is Doug Allen. I'm talking to Volume 2B, item TR 120. I'm testifying to say that the Rose Quarter Freeway expansion is not an improvement to the local neighborhood. Please remove it from the transportation system plan of the Central City update. The purported benefits of this freeway expansion have been thoroughly debunked. The No More Freeway Expansions Coalition has done an excellent job. Please take the time to review and understand the case that they make, that the claimed benefits to neighborhood connectivity and bicycle and pedestrian movement are illusory. I went on the ODOT tour of the site, and I have often traveled through the area on both the freeway and surface streets, and the more I learn, the more I am convinced that the coalition is correct. I ask the council one last time to please reject this project as currently planned and work with ODOT, Metro, TriMet, and residents to come up with a better approach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I am Barbara Shaw, a very happily retired former city employee and a resident of the River Place condominiums, which is right next to the River Place parcels that are the subject of Volume 2A, Amendment Number 7. I guess it's no surprise I'm speaking against this amendment, primarily because it will allow 350-foot towers immediately adjacent to many acres of 35 to 40-foot buildings. This is directly contrary to the Central City Design Guideline that requires new buildings to complement the context of existing buildings. I've heard some language today where people are calling the context for this development the South Waterfront. And although that may make it easier to approve this density if that's what needs to happen, that's not the neighborhood for this development. There's a network of huge highways that separate this parcel from the South Waterfront. The correct context for consideration of this parcel is the 190 units that are the River Place condominiums directly to the north. Additionally, I want to just point out something about the characterization of this amendment as enabling affordable housing. While correct, I think it's an incomplete characterization because it doesn't take into consideration the existing rental housing that's on the site. There's 250 or I don't know the number, but that range of housing that's there now. And although it's not affordable housing, I think it's a fair assumption that the new housing, the incomes of the people who live in the new housing, even with the affordable component, will be way in excess of what's there now, the incomes of the people who live there now. So isn't this kind of the middle, missing middle that is going to be removed? So that's it, and I want to thank you for all of the work on this.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony. Next three, please.
Are Jeff Merrick, Hatham Toulon, and Matt Hill, and they'll be followed by 61, 63, and 64, Tina Wyszynski, Mike Kinjala, and Gwen Baldwin.
You're up.
Well then.
Welcome.
I'd like to start by saying thank you to the mayor and the council for allowing me to speak. Matt Hill, I'm a representative of the Northwest Council of Carpenters and also a member of Local 1503 in Oregon City, Portland. I'm addressing Volume 2B, Amendment 2, the I-5 Rose Quarter project. It is my feeling that this is a good project going forward. This $450 million of infrastructure improvements, they're going to get us what we need, family wage jobs, keeping people employed at a decent rate to be able to afford to live in our city that isn't quite as affordable as it used to be, shall we say. The Rose Quarter, you know, the whole area is a hub of people. There's the people that come into the Rose Quarter for events at the Coliseum, at the Moda Center, the Convention Center, but it's also a major thoroughfare coming through I-5 for both commercial traffic and private traffic. Commuters, people traveling through, people vacationing. Almost 20 years ago that I moved here, it was a traffic problem then, and traffic, as we all know, has gotten worse in those 20 years, and it's going to continue to get worse, and something needs to be done to address it. Otherwise, we will just have a major stop. Speaking to that, you know, the average traffic volumes, you know, depending on the numbers you look at, on on-ramp traffic, 63,990 vehicles a day. On the off-ramps, 84,730. It's an amazing volume of traffic that needs to be moving smoother. As a result of all the traffic and the situation it is, this segment of I-5 has the highest accident rate in the state of Oregon. That should be alarming in and of itself. It's like 3 times the crash rate of the Terwilliger Curves, another past problematic spot. This project, it'll improve the safety of the area and reduce crashes by adding the auxiliary lanes that are needed, allowing vehicles more time and space to emerge. And in that, the addition of the shoulders will enhance the ability of emergency vehicles to handle the incidents that do happen in that particular area. The last thing I want to touch before I leave is that idling time there. An hour of vehicle idling burns approximately 1/5 of a gallon of gas and releases nearly 4 pounds of CO2 into the air. I've heard some people speak to the increase of emissions because of it. I have the feeling that emissions can be drastically reduced by improving flow and stopping the cars that are sitting there idling, trying just to get through. In closing, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your testimony.
The next 3 are Tina Wyszynski, Mike Kingella, and Gwen Baldwin. Jim Howell. Okay, so we've got Jim Howell, Scott Schaefer, and Debbie Kitchen will be next.
Would you like to go ahead and start?
Me?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, by the way, I just double-checking parking kitty, love it. Hello, I'm Tina Wyszynski, and I'm president of the Stadium District Business Association and a resident of Goose Hollow. And I'm here to express opposition to the amendment for the Vista Bridge View, Amendment 2A, number 21, 3A, number 4. A gentleman was here a little earlier named Miles Sisk. He spoke earlier today about needing housing more than and other people needing housing more than needing a view. He is absolutely right. We need housing. It's no secret. Our business association supports density, and we support the need for more housing. We hear every day that there's a shortage of housing, and we all see it every day. The Stadium District in Goose Hollow is unique in Portland in that we have, and we are zoned for, and we have 3 max stops. We are the definition of high density. Our businesses support growth, housing, and density. We need businesses to stay alive and thrive, and that can only happen with an increase in housing and people coming into the businesses. And the density, it's right there. It's just waiting for the right opportunity, which is right now. And that's really what the City of Portland ultimately wants. So please vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, City Council. Gwen Baldwin here representing Oregon Locust and testifying related to Volume 2A, Part 1, Amendment 4, and in support of removing the FAR transfer requirement. A half-block site at Southwest Stark and 10th, which is currently a surface lot, provides a really good example to illustrate our request. The base FAR plus the 3-to-1 affordable housing bonus and a $250 foot base height could result in a 25-story tower, but that's not likely to happen. High-rise construction is more expensive than the cost relative to the income that could be generated by that height and that FAR. So it's likely to result in more of a 7-story podium-style construction, which would give you about 178 units of housing, 36 of which are affordable. But if the developer could build to the full allowed height of 410 feet on that site without the time and cost of FAR transfers, an approximately 41-story Type 1 high-rise would be feasible as costs are spread out over more units. This taller project compared to the shorter 7-story one would give the city 128 more affordable housing units, plus 8 million more in SDCs, 1.8 million more in CETs, 2.6 million more per year in property taxes on this site alone. By eliminating this one unneeded step, the city gains so much more in public benefits. It's a simple amendment that delivers bold results. Removing the FAR transfer requirement will not add any new FAR. That's a really important discussion to have in 2018. It simply facilitates using the existing FAR that Council already approved. I urge you to take this bold step for more housing, more public benefit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners, my name is Jim Howell. I represent AORTA, Association of Oregon Rail and Transit Advocates. We too wish that you would eliminate the I-5 Rose Quarter project from the Central City Plan. If that's not possible, if it, we suggest possibly an amendment or a change to Commissioner Salzman's amendment. It states, ODOT in partnership with PBOT will implement congestion pricing and TDM options. And we would like to see added to that, including modeling an I-5 corridor max line as an alternative to this freeway project. And then goes on to say to mitigate for climate impacts as soon as feasible and prior to, and we would suggest you eliminate the opening of and instead replace it with incurring significant costs for the project. That's a way that our organization has been opposed to this project for many years. In fact, we testified back in June of 2012 against it before the Stakeholders Advisory Committee. And I won't read that. I sent a copy of that to you so you can read it. But as part of that testimony, it states, so far, and this was in the testimony, so far, Metro has proposed a viable public transportation alternative to I-5 through the metropolitan area. MAX provides this alternative in a east-west plane between Gresham on the north, but the north-south I-5 corridor has only the yellow line provided efficient high-capacity transit. And it's my time up. So anyway, you have the rest of it there, but basically we opposed it. We also gave you a copy of 4 little slides of about a 20-minute slideshow that if any of you are interested in this type of alternative, please contact us and we'll be glad to show it to you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you. The next 3 are Scott Schaefer, Debbie Kitchen, and Michael Harrison. And they'll be followed by Ted Labby, Damian Hall, and Mark Velke.
Good afternoon. Would you like to start?
Hi, how you doing? My name is Scott Schaefer. I'm a representative with the Northwest Carpenters Union. I'll be speaking on Volume 2B, the Rose Quarter, Amendment number 2, the Rose Quarter project. I'd like to thank you, Mayor, and members of the City Council for being able to speak today. I'm here to speak in support of the I-5 Rose Quarter project. As a representative for the Northwest Carpenters Union, of course, we support the $450 million of infrastructure improvements to this. will also create a lot of living wage jobs for the community and across the city for our workers. But as a native Oregonian and a Portlander, I've watched this great city grow. That growth has become historically unprecedented in the last few years. The infrastructure is kind of reached its maximum with the traffic, especially in this corridor. It was never designed or envisioned to handle this kind of traffic, especially with the 70,000 plus vehicles that daily go through the on-ramps of the Rose Quarter and I-84. The factors that have made this corridor, like my partner had spoke about, the highest crash rate in the state. As most Oregonians, I drive I-5 to get my family to and from what we do daily. I myself have witnessed wrecks there, pretty scary prospect, and have, tried to veer from that with my family in the car. I will drive that, but I will not do it with my family. This project will help reduce and help in accident recovery by widening the shoulders and hopefully reduce crashes by 50%. We've heard testimony about issues with bicycles, pedestrians in this project. I've been a bike commuter. I know from Southeast Portland to the Pearl and downtown, it's a pretty dangerous ride. The improvements proposed, I believe, would be a safer experience for thousands of bikers and pedestrians and commuters. The connecting central city neighborhoods that I haven't been easily been able to access would be there for us, I believe. I'd like to thank you for your time and hopefully your support in the I-5 corridor improvement project.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for the opportunity to be here. I'm Debbie Kitchen. I own a business in the Central East Side, Interworks General Contractors. We're a small remodeling company. We have about 20 employees. And our company, I participated as co-chair of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for the Southeast Quadrant. And contrary to what some people have described as the stakeholder advisory committees, meaning they are stakeholders from the district, we had stakeholders representing small business owners, representing the 4 neighborhoods that were affected by Southeast Quadrant, representing nonprofits, organizations that are in the Southeast Quadrant, as well as small businesses. And we had some developers. We had environmental groups. We had representatives of active transit and transportation. And so I think it was a very diverse group and represented a wide range of views. And we did not agree all the time. And so I think what we came up with in the comprehensive plan was a balanced view that looked at increasing density in our corridors, MLK and Grand, and all the bridgehead streets like Burnside and Hawthorne and so on. And that's where the density is concentrated for housing and for commercial growth and job growth. But at the same time, preserving the industrial sanctuary in the Southeast Quadrant. We are a unique district in the city. We provide middle-income jobs and in a way and arts organizations and low-cost space for small businesses and emerging businesses. So I think the balance is really critical, and so I'm very concerned about in Volume 2A, Part 1, the number 20, the Salmon Springs corridor, that we are limiting heights in the commercial area in the corridors where we need them in order to preserve the industrial sanctuary in the Central East Side and create these middle income jobs and family wage jobs. So I think that's what's threatened by that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The next 3 are Ted Labby, Damian Hall, and Mark Velke.
And Carla, could I just do a time check?
I've got one more person. Roger Leachman is the last one who signed up.
Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for your patience.
Absolutely. I was able to take advantage of your online viewing and watch from my office and then return.
Perfect.
So it was
well done.
A seamless system as far as I'm concerned. Mayor Wheeler, members of the council, my name is Damian Hall, here on behalf of a client and property owner, Mr. Joe Angel. I'd like to talk about Amendment Volume 3A, Amendment Number 3, which is a view corridor from an overpass over I-84, looking to the west with a view of the downtown skyline and West Hills. There's a proposed amendment in the amendment report, which we are in support of, and request that the council move forward and adopt in its current form. We believe that it is a good amendment because it meets the county's, or pardon me, the city's and council's objectives in relations to allowing full development of the site to the CX density, so increasing density that's allowed in the central city, which furthers the county's affordable housing as well as job creation related goals, which has been discussed here a number of times today. So we think it's a win-win in that regard. We also believe that it provides the same amount of protection, if not more, to the views that are the subject of the view corridor, because we believe a lot of that protection is natural because of the below grade nature of Sullivan's Gulch and the existing freeway. So unless you have any questions, I think it's a win-win for the city. Please adopt the amendment, and that's why I believe we haven't heard any testimony in opposition.
Not in the last 4 hours.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Mark Velke, and I'd like to thank you for the chance to testify. I'll be talking about amendments related to views, and I support the Mayor's amendment and also Commissioner Fritz's and Udaley's amendments on views. I had 2 minutes of testimony right here that I was going to read to you today. However, you've already heard it all. So to save us some time, I'm going to summarize it in a 12-word quote. Okay, now I'm a simple guy, so when it comes to protecting the views we currently have of Mount Hood from the Salmon Springs Fountain and to and from the Vista Bridge, it really is as simple as the following quote. Now, hopefully you won't think I'm a crackpot. I did actually look this up yesterday when I remembered this quote. And besides the quote I'm going to use, it was also originally used by Charles Dickens in The Tale of Two Cities, I found out. So, but I'm not using that particular one. I'm using the one from the 1982 movie, The Wrath of Khan. Okay? Towards the end, when Spock is just about dead, he looks to Kirk and he says, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." So, this is what I'm asking you to do to save our iconic views. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent testimony.
I think there was another line after that, though.
The last person I show is Roger Leachman.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, only up here. Thank you, Mark. My name is Roger Leachman. Did you have a question? I'm sorry. I thought you started to say something.
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay, my name is Roger Leachman. I am resident on Southwest Vista, and I serve on the board of the Goose Hollow Foothills League. I don't think I need to repeat what other people have said about the amendments to protect iconic views to and from the Vista Viaduct and Mount Hood. One might instead ask the obvious question, why weren't they protected in the original proposals? I have an obvious answer. CC 2035 was the result of developers, architects, and property speculators with manifest conflicts of interest who were enabled by a planning bureau focused on accommodating those private financial interests, including the rigging of public process in violation of even the very lax government ethic laws of Oregon. The Planning Bureau, as noted before, even evaluated projected private profits for developers owning the 18 buildings whose heights would need to be reduced to preserve a public benefit. No evaluation for the factor of iconic views. On the subject of iconic views, let's move across the Atlantic and consider Paris, France. Paris and the Eiffel Tower. Funny how the Planning Bureau in Paris should ignore this opportunity. All that buildable inventory around the Eiffel Tower. Perhaps the Portland Planning Bureau can instruct the benighted Parisians about the fallacy of their thinking. But I moved from the frivolity of the French to the US of A. I spent the summer of my junior year among the Navajo in southeast Utah, in the area designated by Mr. Obama as Bears Ears National Monument. Mr. Trump has cut Bears Ears by 85%. Why? to benefit extractive industries, especially the uranium miners whose past activity has already poisoned Navajo water sources. It's the interest of Navajo, Hopi, Utes, etc., being despoiled for the benefit, private financial benefit of Biligana or white men. Light bulb. In America, private profit almost always trumps the public interest. Well, I would ask you to take the smallest of steps to take Portland off the same page as my fellow alum, Mr. Trump. Full disclosure, he graduated in the class after me. So pass the amendments to protect our iconic views. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, that concludes our hearing on the Central City 2035 Amendments Report. Just a reminder, the record will be left open for written testimony until tomorrow, Friday, January 19th at 5 p.m. So if you were not able to be here today and testify, you still have that opportunity to do so.
May I ask a question
Commissioner
about
Fritz.
that? Is your staff actually going to start working on it at 5:01 tomorrow, or would it be possible to extend the deadline to noon on Monday?
They're a hardworking staff, I know that.
I know they're very hardworking, but I personally think that people, having especially done the amount of work that's gone into this particular hearing, you should be able to take the weekend off, and I think that certainly I would appreciate extending the deadline to noon on Monday.
Is there any objection? Seeing none?
Thank you.
We will revise that. The record will then remain open until Monday, January 21st at 12 o'clock noon. I think that's great. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz.
I think it's the 22nd.
I'm sorry, the 22nd. What did I say? January 22nd, Monday, January 22nd, 12 noon. As I mentioned earlier, I'd like staff to also draft amendments for the Upper Hall View issue we moved and seconded today. I'd like that published, please, for review by March 2nd. And in consultation, I understand that's fine. On March 7th, I'd like to begin our session with a public hearing on that particular amendment. Then I'd like to close the hearing and then deliberate on the amendments report and the other amendments that we moved and seconded at the beginning of the hearing today. Is there anything else that anybody would like to do or say before we adjourn?
What time is the March 7th meeting? We should announce that as well.
That is 2 p.m.
It's a 2 p.m. time certain. Thank you.
So the March 7th meeting will be 2 p.m. time certain, March 7th. Thank you, everybody who testified today. Excellent testimony, great points raised by all. We are adjourned.
Oh, shit,